Good afternoon, everyone. For our afternoon session, we will be hearing testimony from the Department of Aviation and the Philadelphia Water Department. Ms. Longhead, will you please call the next witness to testify from the administration?
The next person to testify from the administration is Atif Saeed, the Chief Executive Officer for the City of Philadelphia Department of Aviation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Doing well, sir. Thank you.
That's good. If you just state your name and title for the record, and please begin your testimony, and just bring your microphone in just a little bit.
Certainly. Good afternoon, Council President Johnson and members of City Council. I am Atif Saeed, Chief Executive Officer of Philadelphia International Airport and Northeast Philadelphia Airport. Joining me today are our Chief Financial Officer, Tracy Borda, Chief Administrative Officer, Delisha Wall, and several other members of Aviation team. It is an honor to be here today to present testimony on the Department of Aviation's fiscal year 2025 operating budget. The City of Philadelphia Department of Aviation, which owns and operates Philadelphia International Airport and Northeast Philadelphia Airport, is an enterprise fund operating efficiently with no local tax dollars independent of the city's general fund. Both airports are self-sustaining. The Department of Aviation generates revenue through aircraft landing fees, terminal building rentals, concessions revenue, and other facility charges to fund annual operating expenses. The airport's capital program is funded by airport's revenue bonds, federal, state grants, user fees, and operating revenues. Our airports are incredible economic drivers to local economy. In fact, in 2019, an airport study estimated operations at the airport generated $16.8 billion in economic impact and supported over 100,000 jobs. Air travel continues to recover from the pandemic, with passenger levels at Philadelphia International Airport still approximately 85% of where they were pre-pandemic. As you know, Philadelphia International Airport is the premier European gateway for American Airlines, with new routes to Nice, Naples, and Copenhagen beginning this summer. However, we have an opportunity to connect our region to various other parts of the world as we prepare for 2026 and beyond. Our team has already hit the ground running as far as 2026 planning is concerned, working to make informed decisions to provide safer, cleaner, and greener experience with opportunity for all at our airports. We still have work to do in this space, but I feel confident that with a solution-oriented and collaborative approach, we can provide the world-class experience our passengers deserve. Another way we are preparing for 2026 is investing in our workforce. Our team has been very productive and proactive in our search for talent through attending job fairs, career day events, advertising on social media, meeting with potential candidates at various hours of the day, and streamlining our own internal processes. To support this important work, our fiscal year 2025 budget request is $556,054,000, an increase of approximately $11 million or 2% over fiscal year 2024 estimated obligation levels. Within this request is almost $276 million to fund the Department of Aviation budget itself. The additional budgeted funds of approximately $280 million are used to fund the services we receive from other city departments and our debt service. This budget reflects our commitment as we focus on celebrations planned for 2026 and beyond to increase staffing and contractual services with an emphasis on cleanliness, facility upgrades, enhancing our guest experience, along with furthering our air service development efforts. Thank you again for the opportunity to deliver testimony here today. My team and I are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Always good to see you, Atif, and I want to give a shout out to Shane back there and the whole Philadelphia International Airport team, one of the crowning jewels in the 2nd Councilmatic District. And so I've always had a great opportunity to work with the airport team. Can you just give us an update on the diversity, equity, and inclusion numbers? I know the administration's mission is to focus on a safer, cleaner, greener city with economic opportunity for everyone. So for that economic opportunity for everyone, just give us an update, and also just want to commend you publicly for your yearly How to Do Business with the Philadelphia International Airport Symposium. one of the greatest events I've always had the opportunity to attend and participate in, particularly because you and your team have worked to provide opportunities for Black and brown and women-owned businesses. And I believe that's the great equalizer when it comes to addressing the issue of poverty here in the city of Philadelphia. And so with that being said, I'll turn it over to you for the update.
Yeah, thank you for this question, Council President. I'm going to actually ask Denise Bailey and Beatrice Isaac to come up and join me here. They're the ones who really do most of the work on the ground. Thank you for your ongoing support on the Business Opportunity Forum. It is an incredible platform for us to be able to not only make opportunities available to businesses of all different types, especially underrepresented businesses, but also help connecting various size businesses with each other. So grateful to you for that. I'll have Denise start, and she will cover some of the federal programs and some of the successes there. And then Beatrice will chime in for anything that is specific to city-specific items.
Great. Good afternoon, Council President, and thank you for this question. My name is Denise Bailey, and I am Vice President for Business Diversity and Accessibility at the Department of Aviation. Under my umbrella are a couple of federally funded programs, and Beatrice will speak about the city programs, the local programs we call them. So DBE is the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, where we focus primarily on our capital development. So in that program, we are currently achieving 13% as of this quarter in that space. In fiscal year 2023, we attained 10.8%, so we're increasing towards our goal on that. In the ACDBE program, we have a goal of 21.5% in our concessions program, the largest piece of which is our food and shops program. So overall, on that 21.6% goal, we are attaining just north of 38% overall. And in our food and shops program, more than 45% of the gross receipts are going to diverse businesses. We also have a small piece of business in the car rental for goods and services, where we have an overall goal of 2.05%, and we're currently achieving 2.1% in that program also. In addition to just looking at the numbers, we don't like to set it and forget it. We're doing an awful lot of outreach, capacity building, some of which you mentioned, the Business Opportunity Forum, which you usually attend, and you certainly did last year, is a great way for everyone to learn about all the opportunities at the airport, the whole set list of which Atif mentioned earlier. And so in addition to that, we do a number of other capacity building because each of our business lines is different, so we want to make sure that we continue to focus on that. But not just on the number, we also have a big emphasis on Black and brown businesses, and we do that a lot through making sure that any of the opportunities are sent directly to them, but not just to them, but to some of the communities they hear more frequently from, such as the diverse chambers. They're terrific stakeholders in that space for us as well.
Are you able to translate on the percentages into dollars and cents?
Yeah, so last year when you talk about the ACDBE program, that was about $92 million that went into the hands of diverse businesses. When you look at 2023 in the DBE program, that was about $2.9 million, but even in the first quarter of 2024, that has really, I'm sorry, that's $4.9 million. That has increased to $9 million in the first quarter of 2024 for disadvantaged business enterprises. So higher percentages, but also higher dollar amounts in awards also, which is really important.
Okay. Thank you for those numbers. And again, I'm a strong advocate that one of the key ways for us to address poverty here in the city of Philadelphia is just making sure that the opportunities provided when it comes to the various procurement opportunities and how we do business with the city of Philadelphia are equitable and inclusive. And I think that's the great equalizer in terms of how we move the city of Philadelphia, leveling the playing field so that everybody can have an opportunity to have a seat at the table. And so I just want to thank you for that update. Based upon the 5-year plan, it talks about PHL Airport served 13.4 million passengers in FY23, or 83.1% of the FY19's levels. How does this compare to national trends? And nationally, what is the level of air traffic compared to FY19?
Yeah, that's a great question, Council President. As recovery from the pandemic took place in the country, it certainly was uneven and based on many, many different factors. At the macro level, depending on if you were primarily an international airport, if you were a domestic airport, if you were which part of the country you were in. If you, for example, Utah or Florida, where there was a lot of activity people could perform while maintaining distance, those airports came back quicker than, we call them leisure destinations, that came back quicker than others. We certainly fall towards the other side of the spectrum. We're certainly not at a point like San Francisco or LA in terms of recovery. They're struggled because a lot of eastern markets are still slow to come. But we definitely are not ahead of others depending on our location as well as the makeup of our facilities. There are two factors that are really playing a role for us very specifically. American Airlines is our primary provider, and during the pandemic, like many businesses that were trying to shed fixed costs, they essentially tried to reduce their fleet by retiring planes that were old and not efficient, hoping to return to market as things became as passenger activity improved and replaced them with new equipment, obviously not foreseeing all the supply chain issues and other issues that you've been hearing in the news with various manufacturers. So there are certain planes that were being used to connect us deeper into Europe, what we call boutique destinations. There's about 8 or 9 of them that have not restored yet. So that is one element that is very specifically in our case keeping us behind. Secondly, American Airlines does not just move people internationally from our market, they actually bring people from around the country, and that's one of the benefits of having a hub carrier, is because they're able to connect people from all over the country to our airport and then on to international flights. And obviously that link, because of that first link being missing, is missing as well. We've done really well in ultra low cost and low cost carriers, so Frontiers, Spirits of the world, we've done really well. And there's every indication from American Airlines that as soon as they start receiving equipment, they'll bring all these routes back and we'll be back to where we need to be. So as compared to projecting into this next fiscal year, we are projecting 15.5 million in-plane passengers. We use the number in-plane passengers essentially is the half of total number of passengers, essentially people getting on a plane, and it compares to 16.9 to 2019. We do expect that month-over-month recovery in 2025 we'll start to see for certain months, and we expect by 2026 we'll be fully recovered and beyond what we were at 2019.
In terms of air traffic, give me an idea of leisurely flights versus business, and what's the bulk of flights between those two classes of individuals?
Yeah, Council President, I'm going to actually ask Kate Sullivan to come up and join me as we try to dig deeper into this. Typically, it is difficult from the purchase of the ticket data to understand if somebody's flying for business or not. It really depends on which seat you choose and where you go. So there's a lot of inference and some survey data that we can inform from. General trend in the industry is that the leisure traffic is coming back and has come back beyond where it was prior to. There is a new form of traffic that did not exist previously in the industry. It's called bleisure, I think is the way they say it. So it's people mingling business and leisure. So not just traveling purely for business or not just traveling purely for leisure, but combining the trips, probably for the economics of that. So we're starting to see a shift in that. But as far as business travel is concerned, that certainly is the most lacking. And I'll look to Kate and see if she's got any anecdotal evidence and or hard numbers that she can share with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the question.
Can you pull your microphone up just a little bit?
I can. Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm Kate Sullivan. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at the Department of Aviation. So the business leisure market has been very dynamic since the beginning of the pandemic. I think as you probably know, there was a period in time in 2020 and into 2021 where the vast majority of the travel that we were seeing was either leisure travel or what we call VFR travel, which are people visiting family and relatives. As Atif said, we've seen a significant trend where leisure travel has started to grow, and that is sort of people combining a business trip that they have to take with leisure trips that they have to take. So what we actually saw in our market specifically through the surveying that we do in our airport is that our business travel is back over 30% of the trips that are being taken in the airport. There's an additional about 10% on top of that of people who would characterize their travel as a leisure trip where they're both doing work and leisure. There's another significant percentages associated with leisure and with VFR. But the other dynamic that we see in our market specifically is we see close to 5% of our travel is actually students going to and from school as well. So we have a really diverse mix of travel that is happening into and out of our airport, and we've seen a pretty healthy return of business.
Thank you. When we talk about freight and cargo, in the 5-year plan, part of the testimony cites that the target for freight and mail cargo in FY25 is projected to decrease by 100,000 tons. And so give us an idea of what's driving this decrease and how does that impact the airport revenues?
Yeah, Council President, great question. Cargo is a relatively small part of our overall revenue profile. It's certainly something we are aspiring to grow, as you know, with the investments that we're making. But right now, it's a small part of it. I'll start the answer, and then I'll look to Kate for any more particulars and detail. Essentially, during the pandemic, we saw a great deal of uptick in cargo traffic, primarily because people were home and they were ordering stuff online. So a lot of that stuff had a spike. That particular part of the business kind of plateaued towards the end of the pandemic, and it's kind of found a little bit of a rhythm to itself. Most of the cargo that we move primarily is moved through what we call belly cargo, which is within the planes, and depending on the destinations that the cargo is going to, or the passengers are going to below them, is this cargo that flows as well. I'll look to Kate to see if there's more detail into these numbers that she could shed some light on.
I think the thing that I would add on the cargo trends that we're seeing is that there was a period during the pandemic where there were really significant backups at some of the shipping ports, and cargo that historically would have gotten on a boat was coming through the air, and we saw growth year over year as that trend was happening. We've seen a couple of specific things happening this past year, including the United States Postal Service shifting some of their contracts for airmail from getting on the plane to getting into trucks. So that's affecting the volume a little bit, but the broader thing that we're seeing is kind of the shift away from those pandemic trends into a sort of down cycle for cargo. The cargo world tends to be pretty cyclical. So, we do expect over the next couple of years the numbers to start to go up again, and we are looking to be in a position to take advantage of capturing more of the cargo through our catchment when that happens.
Thank you. Mr. Saeed, last question. From your perspective, what can we do as a city to be supportive of the airport as we become a world-class destination airport? And separate from me being a council president or a council member, I'm definitely a frequent flyer. I will call Shane and say I'm coming through. And so I'm a big fan. So I'm not only the elected official, but I'm also a customer, right? No hookups, all for the record. They do not give any hookups. Everything paid for, y'all listening. So, and so what can we do to be supportive of our international airport? Because it is the gateway into the city of Philadelphia, right? And rather you're traveling out the country, coming into the country, you just feel a sense of pride when you're coming and hanging out and enjoying. Sometimes it's like, I would like to say it's an experience, put it that way, right? And so what could we do to continue support as the Philadelphia International Airport grow and become a world-class airport?
Yeah, Council President, thanks for that question. First of all, let me just express that the time that I've been here, I've seen nothing but enthusiastic support from the Council, including yourself and many other members, deep engagement and partnership in many different areas, and we really appreciate that. I'll highlight this specific item for you. I've been at airports where the community take a great deal of pride in their airport, and when they're asked about how well it performs, they keep in mind both the good and the bad. Sometimes I feel a lot of bad gets out there and we don't talk much about the good. So we've been making a deliberate effort to use any medium that we have control over, including social media, to be able to tell all the wonderful things that happen at the airport, all the wonderful impact that we make to our communities, and all the well-being that is created within our airports. And for us to be able to have your platforms to be able to share that further is always helpful. We're also trying to create enthusiasm around our population wanting to work at our airport. It's a great deal of pride one can take in being an ambassador to the community as people from around the world come through, and a great opportunity to serve humanity at an airport. And as you know, finding workers, retaining workers has been a challenge citywide, but also for aviation department. Any partnerships we can get with council members to get the word out for open positions and create enthusiasm for what we have to offer, all those things are wonderful. And anytime you're traveling to the airport and you have an experience, good or bad, communicating that to us so we can incorporate it in our feedback. Because as a customer, we value your feedback as well, but you also are somebody who probably receives feedback from other people as well. So being able to get that feedback so we can correct our path where needed is also very helpful. Beyond that, your support for the Business Opportunity Forum, as we try to cultivate more diversity in our business portfolio as well as our work portfolio, we really appreciate all of that.
We also partner with the airport as well as American Airlines with the 5K run walk that supports the Eastwood community, which is pretty much the backyard of the Philadelphia International Airport. And also, the team stepped up to the plate, didn't give us any pushback with the renaming of that particular hall after Leon Sullivan, which is a great honor for the work that he's done in the city of Philadelphia. I'm gonna give you one curveball just real quick. Sure. It's not really your responsibility, but nevertheless, it still shows up on your doorstep. How are we dealing with the homelessness and individuals that come down and decide to take over certain parts of the airport?
Yeah, Council President, thanks for that question. We've seen quite a bit of reduction in activity at the airport in past months as we've been supported by Office of Homelessness as well as Police Department. Airport is not an optimal place for shelter, and there are better options, and these services being made available to folks who are looking for a place to be has been instrumental in our ability to be able to handle that. It also creates an environment in which people who work at the airport and people who travel to the airport have appropriate facilities and accessible facilities for their own experience as well. So it's been going really well from that perspective.
Good to hear that. I'm glad y'all are making some progress. I'm sure with the Office of Homelessness, they provide the support that's needed to address mental health, housing, addiction issues, so it's not like total law enforcement removal, but also comprehensive in terms of addressing some of the key reasons why folks are out there in the first place.
Yeah, and we're very grateful, Council President, to point to for all the support that we've received from the administration in being able to facilitate a transition for these folks at a better place than an airport.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. Nice to see you. Hi, Atif. How are you? I have a couple of questions, some more sort of prospective, thinking about how the airport can be a revenue generator for us. As you know, our fund balance is projected to precariously go down, so we have to have ways to fill that. But before that, I wanted to ask you, how is the airport utilizing available infrastructure and investment Jobs Act funding? Do you have any direct line to that?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Councilmember. Good to see you as well. So as far as the bill funding is concerned, we've been, so there are two different components to it. I'm going to ask Tracy to come up here to kind of talk to specifics. The one that you've heard in the news is a competitive process by which all airports submit their projects to FAA for evaluation, and they're scored, and based upon the need, money is allocated. We've been very, very lucky in that area. We received about $39 million towards our restroom program, which is an ongoing program, an important program, and really a priority for Mayor Parker to make sure that restroom experience at the airport is excellent. So very grateful for that support from federal government. Additionally, we received about $34 million in energy optimization that goes towards creating more efficient facilities. There's another component of bill funding that is essentially money that we receive based upon passenger activity, and that is being allocated for some enabling projects on the airfield to make our airport more accessible, especially when it comes to cargo. Anything else you want to add?
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Borda. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at the airport. Atif just explained those numbers really well. We've been very, very fortunate for 3 years in a row to have awards on both sides of the bipartisan infrastructure law funds to Atif's part. We do receive funds that are more dedicated towards the airfield, and they're somewhat guaranteed based on our passenger levels. So as our passenger levels fluctuate, the amount will fluctuate slightly. But we're having a set amount for 5 years from that. And then we have the competitive piece, which we've been lucky enough to throw our hat in the ring each time and receive funds to the tune of about $75 million combined on the competitive grants.
Excellent. My next question is what I started talking about, is revenue generation. And I heard from the previous testimony just now I can't remember who it was, saying that we have rebounded in our travel from, I don't know if it was abroad or domestic, but I was just looking at the U.S. Travel Association. They're saying overall in the country, business and leisure markets are still struggling, and we are 17 out of 18 in the top travel markets. And apparently there's a U.S. Travel Association has a seamless and secure travel commission that started. It seems to be mostly former government officials and some airport representation. So I wondered how that commission can be useful to us here in any specific way. And more importantly, how are we looking at rebounding and exceeding what we were in order for us to really get good revenue from both direct and indirect from the airport?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Council Member. Let me start with the U.S. travel. We have a very close relationship with them. I, along with many of my management team, is involved with them. I sit on the calls that you referenced and all the research that they do. We're part of that. We're among a dozen airports. They were commonly referred to as Gateway Airport Council, which has now going through a little bit of a change in name, but there's about a dozen airports that have highway international travel that are a member of U.S. travel. And as you probably know, Visit Philadelphia, Philadelphia CVB are also members among others in the community. So we have ongoing conversations with them. Let me speak specifically to the revenue component first, and then I'll speak to the air service development that you referenced. So there's a direct correlation between the number of people that are traveling through the airport and the amount of revenue or economic well-being that is created. Clearly, during the pandemic, it was obvious with 95% of the traffic gone, that economic engine came to a screeching halt. So one could argue the fuel to the economic engine is really air service. More air service, the better. And that really is always our focus. As I mentioned earlier, we are an American airline hub, and some of the decisions that American Airlines has made have had impact on us, but there's clear path forward going forward where they are going to bring those services back. But air service is incredibly important for us, and we have a pretty robust function that operates within our airport. I'm going to ask Kate Sullivan to come up again, if she would, our Chief Commercial Officer who oversees that. So there is ongoing dialogue, both inside the community, understanding the needs and collecting data, and then translating that into a value proposition through a deck of information that we share with the airlines to highlight opportunities for them where they might not be aware of. And there's a bunch of information that airlines have access to, but there's a lot of things happening in the community they do not. We bridge that gap. And we consistently communicate with airports, both those that provide us services and those that we believe could potentially provide us service to, for lack of a better term, court them into coming in and doing business with us. I'm going to ask Kate to speak a little bit more about air service development. It's an important thing. It's an effort that kind of happens behind closed doors and sometimes not realized as to how much is being done. So with that, I'll defer to Kate.
Thank you for the question, Council Member. So we have a team that is focused exclusively on air service development. And that's the practice of working with our carriers, and that includes the existing carriers who operate a PHL today, like American Airlines, like Frontier, but also working with carriers who might not be serving Philadelphia International Airport today to really paint a picture of some of the opportunities that exist for our region that we think that they might be appropriate to serve. So I think Atif queued up a lot of the ways in which we tell that story. But we actually just came back from a conference called Roots Americas, where we spent 3 days doing speed dating with airlines that we have today and airlines that we'd love to have in the future to start to tell the story of some of those opportunities in Philadelphia to them. And we're actually seeing some, I think, pretty significant new routes come in 2024 that are going to help, bring more passengers through the facility, but also help us serve new destinations. So this summer, there's like kind of 3 types of routes that I want to highlight. The first is American, who is our hub carrier, has introduced 3 new international routes. So they are flying to Copenhagen, they're flying to Nice in the south of France, and they're flying to Naples. And obviously those flights don't just serve our community and give them access to new destinations, but it brings the connecting traffic that Atif referred to, coming in from all over the US in through Philadelphia International Airport in a way that drives revenue and has economic impact for the region. Frontier launched a new flight to Santo Domingo, which has been really successful right out the gate and is actually one of the most requested destinations that we got from the community with the growing Dominican population in the region. And that, I think, is just a great example of us being able to kind of tell the story of a population that's really growing here and why we need service from Philadelphia to a new spot. I think the final thing that I would highlight is that even though, we are still recovering, this summer is going to be quite strong for us. So not necessarily year-round, but this summer, in July of 2024, our domestic seats, so the number of tickets that the airlines can sell within the US, is going to be up 5.6% over the same period in 2019. And that is through additional capacity, additional carriers like Frontier serving routes that historically had only been served by one carrier, and new routes like San Antonio, which had not been served out of Philadelphia in a few years.
Thank you. I'm out of my time, so.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Council President, and thank you, Atif, and to your entire team represented here today. Some that I have to shout out personally for all of your help and for all the work that we've been able to do together over the past several years. But of course, Shane, we could not do this work without our partner, Shane. Tracy, please give Mr. Border a shout out. I'm sure he's listening. Delisha, Keith, everyone here from the airport unit. I also wanted to give you all kudos for how you work with the airport unit at PPD during that unfortunate incident that occurred in the parking garage at the airport. I had an opportunity to spend some time with the unit at that point, and they were very appreciative of all the support that they received from the executive team and the staff at the airport. I also wanted to say thank you for the meeting we had, Council President, with American Airlines and Lakshman and his entire team. We've already done some follow-up, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity for us to utilize your space for our staff retreat this past summer so that my team and I could learn more about what was happening at the airport, but also some of the real exciting things that we know will be to come. I wanted to start really quickly by notating something you just spoke about regarding your FY25 strategic plan and the expansion of so many airport routes and also low-cost and ultra-low-cost carrier segments. We had the opportunity to also attend the meeting with Frontier. So I say all that to say that we have been engaged with you all and typically ask the questions that we have as needed. But I wanted to highlight a couple things, and you talked about this relative to Council President's question around minority spend, particularly for the concession stands, but also for the local spend. And I know I talked about this when we visited with you all, but we see the local brands throughout all the terminals, La Colombe, of course, Yards, Bud and Maryland's, and I know we are going to enjoy Sabrina's Cafe very soon. But what programmatic work does your department do to continue to increase the local part of the footprint. I talked about this in relation to like a New Orleans or other places where you really feel the character of that city when you visit their airport. How do we help people feel the character of Philadelphia upon their arrival, particularly in preparation for 2026 and for MLB and for all the large events that we know to come? How do we ensure that our local footprint is felt? I'll start there.
That's a great question, Councilmember. First of all, thank you for all your support and your engagement and your interest in the airport. We very much appreciate it. As far as, let me frame this for you, and then I'll ask Kate to speak to some of the plans that we're working on proactively. What you refer to is known in the industry as a sense of place. That's what we refer to it as, really a representation within the airport of the community, so you can experience the community while you're traveling to the airport. It's an excellent place to be able to do that, especially for an airport like us that has a hub carrier like American, and 30% of the people that are traveling to the airport are actually not going to set foot in our city. They're actually traveling to connect to a different flight.
Understood.
And that's a very large number, and one of the benefits of having a hub carrier is having the economic impact of folks who are just simply traveling through. And it really provides an opportunity for you to be able to, especially those who've not been, but even those who've been and don't remember, remind them what a wonderful community we have and what we have to offer. So next time, perhaps, they will not just travel through, but come in and spend their time here either for business or for leisure. So it's very important for us. It definitely is something we spend a lot of time on. We curate our arts program with that in mind as well, because it is part of overall experience that people have as they travel through our city. But food, obviously, is a very major part of a portfolio that we have to offer. So I'll look to Kate, and she will talk a little bit about our partnership with Marketplace and some of the work that we've got going on right now.
And to your point, I just wanted to add here, you know, the new program that you all are talking about to allow for non-ticketed passengers to be able to access some of the vendors. I think that all plays into what you're speaking about. So if you could just speak to that.
Sure.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you for the question, and thank you for highlighting some of the great local brands that we already have and are soon going to have in the airport. We're very excited about Sabrina's.
Me too.
So we've made a conscious effort to focus on local through our concessions program over the last few years, especially going into 2026, right, where that sense of place is so important for people who might be experiencing Philadelphia for the first time. And we really, we view some of our role as presenting the airport as the face of Philadelphia. So current state today, we have about 16 locations that are represented, they're local brands in the airport. This number is going to grow soon. You can find local brands in every single terminal. But as you noted, Council Member, we're going to have Sabrina's opening soon. And we're going to have 2 other local brands opening this spring and into this summer. We're going to have an Elixir Coffee going into the BC Connector, and we're going to have another La Colombe location opening in Terminal F. And so what that will do is take 2 locations that had previously been either national or proprietary brands and make them local brands that already exist in Philadelphia.
Okay.
But we also have some leasing outreach coming up. So our marketplace team that runs our food and shops program is always out in the community seeing what brands are in Philadelphia that may make sense for the airport and who might be interested in being in the airport. Our next round of leasing outreach, the submissions are due actually this April.
Oh, okay.
And one of the asks was to have local brands that are part of people's submissions. We will have one more round after that of locations that we're looking to get open for 2026, and
Right.
that round is coming this summer. That is going to be a blend of the ask of both local and national, because we do need to have, especially with connecting passengers, national brands that people recognize and feel comfortable with in the airport. But that local ask will be to make sure that we are getting submissions that are representative of the entire city. So
Understood.
an opportunity to reach out into some neighborhoods.
Please keep us posted on those opportunities, particularly in preparation for 2026. I have to get this one on the record too, the bathrooms. I think our mayor brought that up at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon. So if you could just talk about the work that you all are doing to update some of the bathrooms.
Sure. Thanks for that question as well. So let me frame the bathroom question in 2 different ways. Before I do that, obviously, as you mentioned, it's a high priority for Mayor Parker, and it's a high priority for airport to make sure that the experience at the airport when it comes to restrooms, because restroom is a place where everybody goes. you may have a choice in other matters, but restroom is something that everybody experiences. We want to make sure that we have the best possible ones. So there are two components to it, if I may speak to both of them ever so briefly. One has to do with infrastructure. We have dated part facilities, old facilities, heavily used facilities, and we have had a program in place that has been expedited to make sure that we're sufficiently prepared for 2026. The restrooms that are being built now as replacement restrooms are being done very thoughtfully. First of all, we are engaging people who upkeep them and clean them to make sure that they're at the table and have the ability to be able to provide feedback as to how we optimize those restrooms from their perspective. But they're also very inclusive. So we've got adult changing rooms that are being built, lactation rooms that are being built, pet relief areas, gender neutral rooms. So this program is being done very thoughtfully, and it's also integrating technology where we can actually collect data. As a user, you can provide feedback, and then we'll be able to use that feedback either to program our maintenance or our cleaning or just general sentiments from you to be able to improve it further. The expedited program is going to be delivered before 2026, and any remaining restrooms that we do not get to will be touched up on before 2026. So we'll be in a better place. The second component, very, very quickly touch on, is the human factor I alluded to earlier. We have workforce that cleans and maintains these restrooms, and these two areas have been areas where we've struggled in the past, and we've had a great deal of success recently with some of the outreach that we've done and some of the innovative ways by which we've streamlined our processes, and we're very optimistic we'll be able to get on top of that. We need to have sufficient workforce to keep things clean. So
I heard the bell. Thank you, Council President. I will come back on the second round with my additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I mean, I'm a traveler. I don't know where these bathrooms they talking about. Mine was cool, but I mean, that's what the mayor say. Then, that's a joke, y'all. Anyway, next, I want to call the chairperson of transportation, Mike Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. A little in line with our leader was referencing, 2026 is obviously a big year for us, and first impressions are lasting, and most of our visitors are going to visit your facility first. So I just challenge you to make us proud. But in your testimony, you referenced an operator at PHL called Landline. I wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit for us.
yeah, thank you for that question, Council Member. So our market is constantly evolving, and people come up with solutions for challenges that otherwise wouldn't exist. Landline is a motor coach. It's a luxury motor coach service that partners with airlines. So as a passenger at a local regional airport, you're able to purchase a ticket from the airline, go to local airports. Atlantic City is an example for us. Go to the airport, check in as if you are going to be flying out. Check your bags, go through security, go to the secure side, get on a bus. Once you are on that bus, you're part of the airline system. So if in case there is any disruption or there's traffic delays, they will make sure that you get connecting flights as if you were flying in one of their planes. That bus then travels to our airport, in our case, bypasses security because it's already been cleared and secure. And you basically get off that bus as if you were getting off a regional plane. And you go into the terminal and connect to the next flight. It's a highly innovative program that required a lot of collaboration from TSA, the airline, the bus company at the airport to make possible. It kind of pushes on the envelope around security that we were able to figure out. It was a pilot run here at Philadelphia, so we should be proud of the fact this is something new. Not the first time we've done something for the first time, but nevertheless a very important change that we believe will be scaled in other communities, and those communities, smaller communities, that otherwise don't have as robust of connectivity as you would want, now have the ability to be able to come through a major airport and be connected within a predictable way. It's a win-win for everybody. Environmentally, obviously, a bus is a much better choice than a regional jet. Economically, for airlines, it's cheaper to operate. For passengers, it's cheaper as well. And for us at our airport, we still get customers and do not have our TSA line impacted. by these additional folks, and they're able to use facilities in the regional airport, which then maintains its TSA service as well as revenue generated by the regional. So it really, as you look through the entire ecosystem, it's a very unique and innovative solution that will be very helpful. TSA is the pilot was successful with us. The TSA is in the process of finalizing the regulations, and we expect this to be something that will be scaled. Not every community has, you need to have population density and a number of airports around a major airport to do that, but we see this as something that is really going to take off, and we expect to have added destination even within our own region.
I commend you for that. Also, well, quickly, we've been actively pursuing the federal bipartisan infrastructure law, and can you just touch on some of the projects, that you benefit with that law?
Specifically projects, you asked?
Just quickly.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to ask Api Appalingam, our Chief Development Officer, to come up here to speak specifically to that. As I mentioned earlier, the two big buckets that money is going in is the restroom renovation program that we have in place, about $39 million, and then $34 million in energy optimization. But I'll look to Api to speak a little bit more about these terminal projects.
Thank you.
Good question. Good afternoon. My name is Api Appalingam. I'm the Chief Development Officer for the Department of Aviation. As Atif and Tracy have both said, we've received about $75 million in competitive grant funding. So the FAA has three buckets of funding. One is called the Airport Terminal Program, which is competitive. So all airports across the United States submit an application that are required to check off 8 different criteria. So from energy efficiency, replacing aging infrastructure, improving Americans with Disabilities Act, increasing competition, creating jobs. And so when the first year the application or the notice of funding opportunity came out, we looked at our capital program and we saw that the restroom renovation program really checked off majority of the boxes. And so we submitted the application the first year and we received $24 million for the restroom renovation program in the first year. Second year, when it came out, the criteria was the same. We also got a sneak peek at what other airports were submitting, and so we looked at our capital program again, and we decided that the restroom program had money left over on the table, so we submitted an application for the restroom. And then what I did with my team was we bundled terminal projects together, so terminal energy efficiency projects. So these are upgrading LED lighting, improving HVAC systems because we have really aged systems, improving substations, so replacing substations to support electrification and things like that in the future. And so we put together a program called the Terminal Energy Optimization Program, and we submitted that, and we were successful in not only getting additional funding for restrooms, we received $15 million, we also received $15 million for the Terminal Energy Optimization Program. And then year 3 rolls around, we submitted both programs again, and we received more funding for the Terminal Energy Optimization, and we got $20.4 million. So we're in the 3rd year now, which just passed, and we have 2 more years, and I have some things that I have in mind that I'm going to be submitting, and we're going to be submitting as a team, because there's still a lot of projects in our capital program, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to get some of those funding.
Oh, I congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
And my last question, Mr. President. Councilman O'Neill and I represent Northeast Philadelphia, and so your other airport up there, it seems you're getting increased traffic, which is wonderful. I mean, it's great for business, it's great for travel, but it also is a concern of some of our residents in Northeast Philadelphia. I just ask you to be mindful of your patterns so that it doesn't hit one neighborhood all the time, that it kind of spreads it around to the extent that it's feasible.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Council Member. We work very closely with the community and with FAA and the tower that controls traffic there. I agree that it's getting busier. Actually, it's getting busier primarily because of some of the training for pilots that they do at that airport. And it's a double-edged sword. We desperately need pilots, but then when you have to fly, obviously, that creates some noise. But we're very much in touch with FAA and keep track of all the complaints that come through and make sure that we're effectively communicating with folks and our tenants to encourage them to take practices that will be helpful.
Well, that's great. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Isaiah Thomas.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon. I want to add my voice to the choir as it relates to cleanliness, similar to what Councilmember Driscoll talked about, as well as Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson. The idea of so many people coming to our city is very important, and their first experience will often be the airport, last experience as well too. And I know it sounds remedial, but to listen to the fact that you recognize that you understand it and you're working on everything, including the bathrooms, is a very, very good thing, and it's something that I'm very happy to hear. As the chair of the Education Committee, we care a lot about out-of-school time and extracurricular activities. One of the things that we've been struggling with as it relates to public schools is the fact that we have so many options for young people as it relates to extracurricular activities, which is definitely a good thing, that sometimes we don't have enough space. One of the issues that we've been running into is finding space for fall sports, for soccer activities, baseball activities in the spring. I can go on and on and on. Can you just take a minute, about 60 seconds or so, to talk about some of the major renovations that is happening at FDR Park, and what is the airport's role in those renovations, and how can we expect to see activity down there that benefit not just young people in South Philadelphia, sorry, Council President, but honestly young people all across the city of Philadelphia?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Thomas. So our role in that particular project is essentially, as we were trying to do wetland mitigation, and as we are building some of the infrastructure for cargo, there was a mitigation effort that was done in collaboration with the Parks Department, and we provided the funding for that, which was about $30 million, I believe. And I don't want to take any credit for all the good work that is happening on the other side by people who are not part of the aviation department, but obviously we're happy that the investment we made to be able to accommodate our growth is working out well on the other end as well.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to put that information on the record. I know that we'll be talking to Parks and Recs more as it gets closer to that time, but I think that's an important thing. My last question, and I don't need a second round, Council President. My colleagues have asked most of the questions I had, but one question I just want, and if you don't have the answer, get it back to us in writing. One of the things that we know that's coming is, I don't want to say it wrong, but the electronic vertical takeoff and landing aircrafts, right? This is going to change the economy nationally. I'm looking at us locally, and I think about other innovative things that have happened that has put Pennsylvania, more than Philadelphia, really behind the 8 ball. Are you guys thinking about these type of aircrafts and what they'll be able to do as it relates to transportation for people going from city to city, transportation of cargo, and how are you at the airport as well as our Northeast location kind of preparing for this next wave of travel and the impact it's going to have on local and national economies?
Yeah, another great question. So this is a topic of discussion in the industry. At airports, we all talk. We don't compete per se with each other, so we talk with each other all the time. And this is a topic of discussion in just about every major conference that we are at. There is a direct correlation between population density and demand in areas. So there are certain places that seem to be a little bit ahead, both in terms of infrastructure investment and the demand. But it certainly is something that we consider and talk about both operationally and from infrastructure perspective. Since Api is here, I'll ask her to say a few words, and then if you need further information, we can certainly provide you with more information as well.
Great question. So we call it eVTOL. So
Yeah, I can't say that word, right? And I wasn't going to try. I heard it said, but I was, I'm not going to try.
It's like EV olive oil, eVTOL, electrical vertical takeoff, yes.
Okay.
So that's an excellent question. So yes, we know it is in the horizon. And one of the things that we are preparing for is the electrical demand on such an infrastructure, on this technology. So what we've done is looked at our electrical capacity and seeing how do we support it in a phased manner. So we look at our vehicles first. So we're looking at vehicles like cars that we drive, the ground support equipment, so the tugs that are being used to carry bags to the planes. We're looking at a scaled approach. So first we're focusing on how do we prepare for the growth in electrical vehicles that are on the ground, and then make sure we can support that before we go look at aircraft. And really the aircraft technology is driven a lot by the airlines and aircraft manufacturers. What we would be doing is providing the infrastructure on the ground to support that. So So we are in the midst of a master plan, and in that master plan, we are looking at future potential locations for something like an eVTOL.
So we're going to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on the council side to stay on top of this issue. I know Councilmember Nina Ahmad is doing a hearing on the, like you talked about, the charges on the infrastructure side. But again, when I think about other industries that have presented themselves that are really lucrative right now, not only has Philadelphia been behind, but Black and brown people have been 10 times behind in every city across the country, except for maybe when you look at what Oakland did around some innovative stuff with their economy. So how are you thinking about Black and brown communities getting access to this economy when it presents itself? Because when you think about it from the inception of it, it seems like it's going to be a space of privilege. And we don't want this to be a situation where only wealthy, privileged people get access to not just the business side, but the convenience that this industry will create. So I just want to, and you probably don't have an answer to that right now, but you know, as a person who's advocating consistently for Black and brown communities, Black and brown folks to get access to wealth, I think this is an important space. And if we get it right in Philadelphia, I mean, look, imagine if you could look at, I don't know, I'm bad with this stuff, but you know, we got municipal services across the street. Imagine if we can turn the top of the municipal services building into a possible landing space where Black and brown businesses and entrepreneurs can take advantage of this new economy that's coming and be able to use government buildings to be able to launch their businesses. So I know it was like a loaded question. If you want to respond, you can, but if you don't have a response, it's not the end of the world. We're going to submit a lot of information in writing, and we're going to continue to hopefully work in collaboration to be able to make sure that we have access to this robust economy, because we know that in the next, I don't know, I'm not good with the timeline, but in the next few years, we know that this is going to be a very lucrative industry, and we want Black and brown people to get access to this space.
Yep. Council member will definitely get back to you with some additional information as far as the eVTOL technology and how it's scaling, and look forward to partnership with you as this technology comes about to make sure that it's creating equitable opportunity for everybody.
You notice I still didn't say the word, right? But thank you. I appreciate it. Council President, thank you. That's it. I don't have a next round. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President. I don't really have much questions. Just, I would like to know the number of employees that actually work at the airport, airlines, and, you know, the other staff, what that total number is, and if you have to get it back to me, you can. And then the other was, what's the revenue that is brought into the city of Philadelphia from the airport?
Let me answer your first question. So we have ways to be able to calculate the number of people that actually work at the airport. One, the benchmark we use is the number of badged employees. So anybody that has employment at the airport, regardless of which employer they work with, provided that they have access to secure site, they have a badge. The current number of badges is between 16 and 17,000. 1,000. So that's the number of people that actually are part of our economy, from concessionaires to card pushers to people providing cleaning facilities, cleaning services to airlines and everybody else, and even on the airfield with all the work that happens there. So it's about
Right, and that
17,000.
doesn't count temporary people that are like working on the airport construction-wise or something like that?
In some cases it might, and there might be some turnover on that, but for most part, these are people who are actually employed and have access long-term to the airport.
Right.
To answer your second question, Council member, the airport's impact on the city's revenue is not direct but indirect, and I'll explain why. Airport is a closed system. By federal regulations, all the revenues that are generated at the airport need to be spent either for operating or capital costs. And part of that, as you saw in the budget, is services we receive from various departments, fire, police, et cetera, that we reimburse the city through Aviation Fund. We are not allowed to pay dividends or I guess dividend is the best way to put it, into another fund. The way we impact the revenue within the city is by creating the economic impact that we do. So we are actually in the process of updating our study. I don't want to misspeak the number, but it was over $100 million in local taxes, if I remember correctly, that is generated for the benefit of City of Philadelphia, that money that goes into the general fund. So we're not contributing directly from our operations, but by continue to remain a robust engine, we're enhancing that impact indirectly.
Got it. Thank you. Sure. That's all, Council President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Council. Thank you. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. 1, 2. There we go. Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Adding my commendations to you, Mr. Teef, and to all for all the work that you all do. I also want to commend you on naming, I believe already, that considerable capital improvements are needed to handle the growing volume of passengers and PHL's cargo expansion. When can we expect PHL's master plan to be released on those?
Yeah, I'm actually going to look to Api because she's leading our master planning effort. Thank you for the question, Council Member. And we can talk to both of those items, but you want to start with the master plan?
So, I'm sorry, your first question was about the capital projects. Can you repeat that, please?
Just wanted to know when, if there's a master plan around being able to handle the growing volume of passengers and your cargo expansion as well.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, so we are in the midst of updating our master plan. We started that in 2019. It is a fairly long process because it's very thorough. We're looking at our existing infrastructure, our existing capacity, and looking at a 20-year growth. So FAA, which an authority that oversees airports, requires that a forecast be done for a certain amount of period, and so it's a 20-year forecast. So for us, we're looking at 2040 as our end goal for what we want to develop PHL for, and at that stage, we're looking at nearly needing about 20 additional gates, so roughly 1 gate every year if you count 20-year forecast. So we're wrapping up the update portion of the master plan. Okay. We're moving into advanced planning. This is where we're looking at enabling projects. So we're constrained by land and water. And so when we build, we essentially have to build on top of what we currently have. So we were looking at how do we do that in a strategic manner without interrupting any of our current operations, right? And so we're looking at potentially doing enabling projects that rebuilds an existing facility at another location. But we're, again, constrained by a lot of things, and we're looking at what do we need to move around to be able to build new terminal facilities. So the advanced planning is about a 2 to 2.5 year process.
Okay.
So at the end of that, we're hopeful and optimistic that we will have a plan that is going to start rebuilding our terminals one by one. But we are salvaging one of our existing terminals, which is Terminal A West, for those that have flown through. It is built in a way that is modern and supports the passengers' needs and what we need in terms of infrastructure. But a lot of our other terminals, they were built in the 50s, and they don't support the needs of our passengers today.
Got it. So the ballparking it, the plan would be done by 2027, 2028?
The advanced planning effort should be done by that time, and we would be moving into designing our facilities.
Thank you very much. I also appreciate that you've incorporated sustainability into your expansion plan, as I understand it. One consideration, especially in light of what we have all been speaking to, and our office is very much so looking at, which is the fact that we will be the host city of everything in 2026. We wanted to find ways to increase the number of visitors using SEPTA to travel into the city once they get past our airport gate. Is there any existing interdepartmental mechanism to develop this further out to make this happen?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Council Member. So we have ongoing dialogue with leadership at SEPTA. I think there is a general consensus that more frequency would be beneficial for both sides because it brings more confidence for travelers and more frequency, which obviously has revenue impact as well. I don't want to speak for SEPTA and their challenges in terms of their budgeting and so on, but please know that that conversation is ongoing as we prepare for 2026.
It's encouraging. Great. It's a great opportunity to be able to seize that and to encourage ridership at a time when we can maximize it. I want to recognize that more businesses coming to the airport can be great for the city as well, including creating great jobs for Philadelphia, but I want to hear more about how the airport is thinking about its impact on residents who live nearby, specifically in the good Councilman President's District. Can you talk more about the airport's plans to address air quality and other environmental impacts in Southwest neighborhoods in particular?
Yeah, do you want to take that?
Sure. Another great question. So environmental is something that falls in my portfolio as well in the development world. So when we're looking at capital projects, we've looked at ways to plan before we get to design. How do we plan it in such a way that quality of life around, in terms of communities, our guests, our employees are not impacted as much. So we looked at our design standards and we've added additional accreditation processes to our design. One in particular that I'm really proud of is called Envision. So many folks have heard of LEED, right? LEED certification, which the city has for buildings. We brought on something else called Envision certification, which looks at quality of life issues as well. And I'm really proud to say that one of our projects just recently was certified as Envision rated project. It's the first in the state of Pennsylvania. So what that does is it looks at noise and what does the noise impact as a result of construction. It looks at lighting pollution and what does the lighting do in terms of projects. It looks at do we have stakeholder engagement in our projects? Do we bring in people and ask them for their opinion or feedback about a certain project and the phasing that might needed as a result of this project. So to answer your question in short, we've kind of rewinded back our processes to see when we start from a planning stage, how do we make sure we're making informed decisions so that when we get to construction and those impacts are faced, it's minimal to zero.
Thank you for that consideration. It's just, I'm mindful of the council president's district. A lot of folks that look like you and me are there. And when we do building and develop in that area, a lot of times we overlook the health impacts that come to fore the years down the road. So thank you for that consideration and forward thinking and looking. We know the importance of strong supply chains. The pandemic showed us that, among many things. PHL's cargo expansion is an opportunity to meet changing needs and create new jobs. We also know that warehouse jobs are dangerous and have high injury rates, and we're mindful of that as well. What can PHL do to encourage good, safe jobs once the cargo facilities are up and running?
Yeah, Council Member, it's a great question. Let me find some information from team. I do not have that level of detail of that project. So we'll make sure that you get an answer in writing on that.
Thank you very, very much. We're just mindful that workers need a voice in the job. And
Absolutely.
so I want to hear more about that. And I will come back around next time there's an opportunity. Thank you, sir.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
In reading the testimony, you mentioned the apprenticeships that you're looking to fill. Can you describe to us what your outreach has been, will be, to attract Philadelphians to these opportunities?
Sure. I'm going to have Delisha come up here. Delisha Wald is our Chief Administrative Officer. I'll let her introduce herself and she'll take that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good
Great
afternoon.
question. My name is Delisha Wiles. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer, and we've been working on the apprenticeship program for some time. And so we're happy that we're finally at a place where we can kind of begin the program. And so we've just recently gotten some contracts together with some local companies, JEVs, CCP, to work on our apprenticeship program, right? So we're working also with schools, some of our CET schools. Excuse me. So the program itself is designed, we have a couple of different things that are going on. One is an internal upskilling program. The first upskilling program is designed to work with our current staff to get them into higher paying jobs and get them into trades. That's the beginning part. The second part is the apprenticeship program, and then bringing people for technical schools so they can actually have the training they actually need. We were working with, outside of our own initial staff, we were working with some outside agencies to bring people in, excuse me, to bring people in for that purpose. So a portion of it is just making sure that we have people who are interested in the airport, who are interested in jobs, interested in technical and non-technical positions, and make sure we have a pipeline. And so a portion of our staff, we brought on a workforce development person who did some work previously in that area to actually build up the program. And so we're hoping to launch probably the end of this year, our apprenticeship program. So we're kind of excited about it. We realize that if we are going to have people in trades in the future, it will require us to kind of start at the entry level and not just bringing in people who are already skilled in that area with years of experience. And so we're kind of excited about the work that has been done, but it has been a long journey with the enabling projects that we're required to get there.
Thank you. I would, I think all council members would appreciate if you can allow us, provide us information on when those opportunities become available so we can let our constituents know that they exist for them. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
What economic impact is projected from the expansion of Frontier at the airport and I guess the recruitment of other low-cost carriers?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm going to see if we have that answer for you. Look to Kate, no? Okay. Why don't we get back to you if we are able to get some of this data. We do, in certain cases for international flights, actually do study the economic impact. And sometimes some of the destinations that are being started by Frontier that you're specifically talking about, it might be a little bit hard to get our arms around, but let us do a little bit of research and get back to you what we can find.
Thank you. How has, if any, if this, I guess the perception of a pilot shortage affected the operations at the airport?
Yeah, Council Member, thank you for that question. So we clearly in the industry, there is a pilot shortage and it's having impact on airlines. You've seen a lot of smaller planes grounded as staff is being shifted towards larger planes, which makes economical sense for airlines to do. Clearly having a 50 or 75 seat plane rather than, or having a 150 seat plane rather than 175 or 50 seat plane with the crew is much better value proposition for them. Airlines are all reporting that they're all diligently working towards that. This is something that is important to them. And you know, all airlines are trying to solve that problem. And in the beginning, it was by paying everybody more. And eventually, it became a little bit of a price race between them. It does impact us in terms of our FCON course and some of our regional flights that are not back yet with American Airlines. And what we've heard from American Airlines is they're diligently trying to cover that gap. So they're going to be bringing those flights back. And they think of those flights as a core service that they provide, and they want to restore that service.
And what are we doing locally to address this impact that the pilot shortage is having?
Council member, there is work done on our airport. For example, Northeast Airport has a flight school. So supporting those businesses is important. We've got a small flight school that actually goes into local high schools and finds students and trains them. So there's good work being done at that level. It really is about having the proper infrastructure locally and regionally and nationally to fill that pipeline and encouraging people for that career. That's all I can think of that could be potentially done.
You, in a testimony earlier, were talking about the vendor and vendor opportunities. You know, I, in a previous life, represented a vendor who was a holdover tenant at the airport. He had a national franchise restaurant there. So it was different trying to negotiate with Marketplace. So what relief or opportunities are there for some smaller local vendors who want to participate in, I guess, the economic vibrancy of the airport? I mean, I know you mentioned La Colombe, but I wouldn't consider them to be, you know, a small business anymore. They were bought for almost $1 billion by a New York-based company. So what opportunities are there for real local small businesses to vend at the airport?
Let me see if I can have Kate and Denise come up and see if we can address the question the best we can at this stage, and if we need to, we can follow up with you further. Marketplace is our concession operator at the airport, as you mentioned, and they're master concessionaire, and they subcontract everything from there. I'll look to Denise and Kate to see if there is any specific answer to your question they have now, and if not, we'll get back to you with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. This is a great question and something that's really important to our airports. First of all, we too, even though we know we have great success in our program, especially with our diversity numbers, we also have a big emphasis on more local firms and more diverse firms. So last year, we started what we call our Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, ACDBE Academy, where we developed, along with Marketplace, a 4-month program to actually help folks understand how do you bring a street-side location into an airport location, because as you identified, it's different in an airport. And so we worked with the diverse chambers and had all minority participants, 13 last year, went through our course, but we just didn't help give them information and take them through 4 months of curriculum. We also have stuck with them and invited them to the Business Opportunity Forum, where some of them got shout outs. We have been making sure they go to our leasing outreach and are working with Marketplace's leasing folks to understand the leasing process that's going on right now. And we're really hopeful that some of those are actually going to be bidding and hopefully successful in those ventures. But even before they get to brick and mortar, because that is a big jump, we are looking to make sure that where we can get product placement in there as an on-ramp to having an actual store location under their banner. So we had 13 folks go through that program last year, and last week we started our 2024 class, where we have 17 firms, again, all minority local businesses that are participating in what now is a 6-month process, because we want to add a little more meat to the bones based on that. We again got recommendations from the diverse chapters of the diverse chambers, but also interestingly enough, a couple of our graduates from last year recommended to some of the brands that they knew to come in and actually take that module and that course also, so that they can become more ready. As Kate said, it's a central focus to make sure that we have local businesses, but to your point, small and diverse businesses need to be able to take advantage of it also.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Now we will do our lightning round. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Council President. Very quickly, I wanted to just notate on page 5 of your testimony, you talked about a part of your FY25 aviation request, aviation fund request has been offset by a $17.8 million reduction in your debt service. Can you talk about that work and how you'll sort of be looking at opportunities for continued reduction, recognizing that I think the request for FY25 is like $151 million?
Yeah, Council Member, great question. At a budget hearing, you want to make sure your CFO gets to speak, so thank you for that question.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, I always say the best part of debt service, when you kind of look at the debt service schedule, is all of the white space that you see as the declining debt service. It leaves room for all those projects that Api was talking about. It leaves room for us to take on more debt. And in fact, I think we're coming to before you later this year through the Treasurer's Office.
Well, that's why I'm asking, because you have some, water has something. I'm looking at all the requests.
Yeah, so we've been really fortunate that we're hitting our maximum annual debt service, and then there's this fall off, especially as we prepare to take on more and more projects, even queuing up for the master plan projects in the future, right? So the good news is we'll be speaking with you ahead of time, and then we'll be coming before you to talk about expanding our commercial paper program, which is expandable, which allows for us to, it's great because you can draw funds as needed, right? Then take it out with the longer term debt. And we'll also be going after some new money. And we have the space, the capacity now to take that on. So it's good timing for us.
If you could keep me updated about that, particularly because now as Chair of Finance, I'll be interested in that work a great deal, but also because we need to know and understand what we need to be prepared for as a city, and now that you all have an aviation fund, I'm just going to put that out there.
Absolutely.
So please keep us updated on any restructuring, any additional reductions in debt service. That will be important to me in particular. Really quickly, my colleague and our Chair of Transportation mentioned the Northeast Airport And I want to commend Api for all of her work. She has been wonderful. As former chair of Committee on Environment, she was just amazing in all the work that you all are doing, and also around the lead bill that I passed last term. But I wanted to ask specifically about the plans for the solar farm up in the Northeast, because my colleague brought that up relative to the traffic in the Northeast already. And then also, you all notated that you have plans to achieve a level 1 certification for the Northeast Airport, but move up a PHL to level 2. And you know that that requires providing 3 years of carbon emissions data, setting emission reduction targets, and, you know, can you just talk about how you're going to get there, and then how you'll get to level 4, and then if you plan on leaving Northeast at level 1? And then I will submit the balance of my questions for a written response, but I am also particularly interested in the issue that Councilmember Thomas brought up about the eVTOLs, and you talked about at that point the electrical demand and capacity, but particularly for the growth in electric vehicles. I remember last year we had talked about this, and you said that you all over the next 10 years would plan to install charging stations at 1% of your public parking spaces for passengers, and that would result in about 150 additional parking spaces. And so, you know, knowing all of this new information that I heard today in your comments to my colleague, should we aim for something higher than 1%, particularly around the electrical demand and capacity if you go with these eVTOLs?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Council Member. Pretty much everything that you've asked about falls within the purview of Api, and she's got a great passion for it, and so does her team, so I'll let her respond to this.
I heard the bell, but you've been wonderful to work with.
Yes, I think I have to keep my tradition alive and say Happy Earth Month. April is Earth Month, and Earth Day is coming around, so Happy Earth Month to everyone. Your first question was about the solar farm at PNE. So, Council Member, as you know, we did release an RFP for the solar farm 2 years ago. We went through an RFP process, and we selected a vendor. Unfortunately, due to COVID and the environmental situation for pricing and things like that, the vendor decided to pull out on that RFP process. And so we're back to square one, but we're an underdog, so we like to get up. We're getting back up, and we're going to be reissuing another RFP later this year to go at it again, to develop a solar farm. As you pointed out, with the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program, PNE is at level 1, and that solar farm is really the key for us to move that up to level 3, because that will reduce our scope 3 emissions at PNE. So we're going to be releasing that RFP right now. My team is planning on Q2 of 2024 to release that RFP again. But good news is, as a result of that RFP, we did install some infrastructure at PNE to support a solar farm. Something we found out through the RFP process is that we needed a transformer, and so we worked with PICO to install that. So we're more robust now at PNE to support a solar farm, and we're excited to embark on that again.
Great. Can you please just keep my colleagues updated, particularly our chair of the Environment Committee, Councilmember Gaudier, and also our district council members in the Northeast, okay?
Understood.
Thank you.
I think you had a question. I don't know if I have time.
I heard the bell.
Okay.
I want to respect and honor the clock. If you could just send the balance of the responses in writing. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the Water Department on standby, and so we're going to be concise and to the point. The chair recognizes Councilman Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. My question is about medical care travel, commonly known as medical tourism, which I don't like to really use. I wondered what your role is in that space, and do you work with the Philadelphia International Medicine? There's some kind of an organization for all the hospitals participate in, and what your role might be in that.
Yeah, Council Member, I think your question is in regards to air service development and connectivity. Is that, am I understanding this right?
And just to make that travel as smooth as possible, because these are people very vulnerable coming for treatment here, and how it seems a little crass, but we are not even in the top 5 in the country for being destinations, even though we have so many wonderful medical establishments here. Boston is #1. And we're not in the top 10 in the world. Canada is number one and we are not. So I just wanted to know where we can facilitate this and what your role might be.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to ask Kate to kind of jump in here and provide some further detail. But obviously, every business opportunity, every demographic within the community that we can get information and then propagate that back to the airlines and to the destination airports to stimulate the demand. And if that happens in collaboration with other agencies, like Philadelphia CBD is a great partner to us in some of the international business development. We work closely with World Trade Center. We work closely with World Affairs Council. And there are many others that are important partners, but also with the businesses themselves and facilities that actually offer the services. Working with them closely is also an important part of the research work that we do. Let me have Kate kind of try to see if we can provide you a framework of what has been done and what opportunities might lie for us to be able to work together.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Council Member. So we do work really closely with the healthcare systems, with specific hospitals, and previously Philadelphia International Medicine, to understand some of the markets that are the most significant sources of essentially medical visits for the city. And we take that information and we incorporate it into our air service development storytelling so that we are able to go out and say, hey, we're getting a fair amount of tourism from Qatar. We're getting a fair amount of visits from Ecuador. And we're able to share the airlines what some of that demand looks like, but also kind of share the story of what the needs of those patients who are on that trip are as well. So we've actually worked closely with CHOP recently to communicate some of the needs of their patients to one of our carriers on a route that those CHOP patients are traveling most frequently. The thing that I would add, that obviously the burden of care and of transporting these patients largely falls to the carriers. But one of the questions that Councilmember Gilmore Richardson asked earlier was about our Wingmate program. And we've actually introduced a new program that allows non-ticketed guests to enter the airport. So you can apply for a Wingmate pass, and you go through a TSA background check process. And if you are approved for that Wingmate pass, you can go through TSA and actually go into our terminals. And what we're finding is that since that program launched in November, we've approved about 3,000 passes, and 95% of those passengers, the people who are using the passes, are using it to accompany a passenger who's either departing from PHL or coming into PHL. And specifically, 20% of those pass users are saying that they are accompanying somebody who has a disability or a mobility concern. So I think to your point, this is a critical part of the storytelling that we do around air service development, around specific markets, around specific needs of the patients. But it's also something that we're keeping in mind when we're looking at new guest amenities, knowing that there is a population that is traveling through the airport who we want to provide care and support for.
Thank you so much, and I commend Atif and his team for an excellent presentation with so much detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Jim Harity.
My questions are for the Water Department. Apologize.
Councilmember Kendra Brooks.
Thank you. So in 2021, we passed the bill bringing up the airport worker pay to $15 an hour. What is the current average wage for airport workers? And have we continued to see an increase in those wages, those family-sustaining wages at the airport?
Thank you for that question, Council Member. When you ask for airport worker, you're asking system-wide all different employers?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see if we have that information. If not, we will see if we can submit that to you in writing.
Okay.
We'll find out what information we can gather.
Okay.
And if we are able to, we'll certainly provide you a written response for that.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councilman Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Council President. As you know, well, you probably don't know, I serve on the Environmental Committee as well. The city as a whole has made progress transitioning to a fleet of electric vehicles. I know it was mentioned earlier that you're looking at electrical capacity that you may have to make the transition. Does that mean that you've made any material moves toward the goal, as well as for the vehicles used by the tenants of the airport as well?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Api is the one who is leading that effort as well, so I'll let her speak to that as well.
Talk to me.
Hello again.
Hello.
So yes, we developed a vehicle and equipment electrification strategic plan. It's a mouthful. Okay. But what we wanted to do with that is identify what our existing infrastructure was, at PHL. Who all at PHL, including Department of Aviation, is owning and operating electric vehicles. So that looked at DOA, airlines, and we established a baseline. Then we looked at what is our growth projection, and as Council Member Gilmore Richardson said, we do have some projections for where we would like to go, and I'm happy to say, yes, we are making progress.
Gotcha.
So last year, in partnership with Southwest Airlines, they converted all of their ground support equipment to electric. So that brought up our electric vehicle percent from 22% to 26% for ground support equipment. And we purchased 10 electric vehicles for the DOA. So we are making progress in terms of electrification, but as I said to the eVTOL question, we have to plan this out. And we have to make sure that the capacity is there as the demand increases, right? And the capacity grows as the demand grows. So we are making progress, and it's in a strategic manner, and it's not just the Department of Aviation, but also our airlines and our partners that are at PHL.
All the respect for the intentional way by which you're moving and developing and increasing our capacity. Thank you for answering the questions. That's it.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just back along lines of the ACDBE Academy, can you tell us how many of the participants actually were able to lease space at the airport?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember. Denise Bailey is going to respond to that.
Thank you for that question. So since we had the academy last year, that just ended towards the end of last year. We haven't had a leasing opportunities. So that's what's going on now. Kate mentioned that earlier, that those proposals are due in April. And so we're looking to see, first of all, did any of them bid or join up with someone to bid? But we can keep you posted on that.
Thank you. And one more question along the lines for the low-cost carriers. I'm a thrifty flyer. I'm proud of that. So what are some of the impediments to getting brands like Avelo and the other ultra low-cost flyers from having gates at the airport?
Yeah, that's a great question, Council Member. So for airlines, the decision to fly someplace is purely economical. It really is about where they can deploy their equipment and their fuel and their staffing to be able to get the best bang for the buck, for lack of a better term, the best margins. And it is, as Kate mentioned earlier, what we try to do is proactively tell our story and help them make a decision to come to us and basically be able to entice them in whichever way we can through data and information that we can provide, but they're very pragmatic in their approach. Many of these airlines have strategies nationally as to what footprint they want to cover, which destinations they want to go to as a preferred method. We're constantly in ongoing dialogue with all of them, any opportunity we can get. And the decision not to come is not really based upon lack of effort and or even sometimes demand. It really is their own priority. Lately, what we've seen, a lot of airlines actually have problem receiving their planes because of the backlog with the manufacturers. And a lot of times what we hear is that as soon as we get those planes, we will definitely be interested in sitting down with you to see if we can connect with you. Luckily, right now, we've got pretty robust competition with Spirit and Frontier and others. But I think we've got a very good profile in terms of extra low carriers, but we will welcome anybody else that we can, and we proactively try to get them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. That concludes this hearing, this part of the hearing. Next, I'm going to ask Ms. Helen Loghead to call up the next person for public testimony, which is...
The next person to testify from the administration is Randy Heyman, Water Commissioner.
And thank you, Airport, for your testimony. How you doing, sir? How are you? Mr. Heyman, just state your name and title for the record, and you can begin your testimony.
Yes. Randy Heyman, Water Commissioner.
You can begin your testimony. How are you today, Mr. Rain? Mr.
Doing
Heyman?
well, doing
Good
well.
to
Thank
see you.
Good to see you.
You can go ahead and begin your testimony, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. Good afternoon, President Johnson and members of the City Council. I'm Randy Heyman, Water Commissioner. Joining me today are Lawrence Yangley, Deputy Water Commissioner of Finance, and Benjamin Jewell, Deputy Water Commissioner of Operations, as well as other members of the PWD leadership team. I am pleased to provide testimony on Philadelphia Water Department's fiscal year 2025 operating budget. I am honored to be here today representing the 2,000 employees of the Philadelphia Water Department who work around the clock to ensure the delivery of safe, high-quality, and reliable drinking water and the treatment of wastewater and stormwater to protect our rivers and streams. As you are aware, the Water Fund is an enterprise fund for the city. It's comprised of revenues generated through charges to our customers. The Water Department's operating budget is a component of the Water Fund. And it is this operating budget for which I am providing testimony to you today. The proposed fiscal year 2025 Water Fund budget totals $533 million, an increase of $17 million, or 3% over fiscal year 2024 estimated obligation levels. This increase is primarily due to a Class 100 increase in labor to provide for, among others, labor agreements, regulatory compliance, and transfer of capital positions to the operating budget. Class 200 for an increase for permit compliance and major maintenance costs at the plants, and Class 300 and 400 for an increase in chemical costs. The Water Department is facing significant challenges. Inflation continues to be one of our most pressing factors in our need for more revenue in fiscal year 2025. In addition, we have increasing compliance costs for new obligations under the federal lead and copper rule update and improvements. We are taking the necessary steps today to invest in our future. The department embraces integrated planning as a means of prioritizing limited funds for the most beneficial and cost-effective projects. This allows reasonable and affordable schedules for making progress towards the long-term goals consistent with the department's mission and vision. I am proud to say that we are currently underway in a 25-year water revitalization plan, representing billions of dollars in local infrastructure investment and jobs. This plan spans 400 projects. It is necessary to maintain clean, reliable water in Philadelphia in the coming decades. It will create new strength in the system and increase flexibility, allowing us to better face threats ranging from climate change to chemical spills. The department is also currently working on an update to our wastewater plan to provide long-term direction for improvements to the 3 water pollution control plants, pump stations, and other components of our wastewater system. The Green City Clean Water Program, established as part of the 2011 Consent Order and Agreement, the COA, with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, is now in year 13 of a 25-year implementation schedule. At the end of fiscal year 23, more than 900 green infrastructure sites in neighborhoods across the city have resulted in a reduction in annual combined sewer overflow that exceeds 3 billion gallons. Let me be clear, this means that our city's commitment to this effort stopped over 3 billion gallons of combined sewer overflow pollution from ever reaching a stream or river in the city of Philadelphia. When considering our linear assets, sewers, and water mains, a significant portion of Philadelphia water system will reach the end of useful life by 2050. PWD is increasing the amount of water mains and sewers targeted for replacement or renewal each year. We recognize climate change will pose new challenges for water pollution in the future, and we are preparing for that too. We have a full-time climate change and adaptation program that is looking at ways to protect our rivers and infrastructures as well as reduce our own fossil fuel use, helping us to ensure the long-term resilience of our investments. Our adaptation approach starts with using the best available climate science and modeling techniques to assess our near and long-term vulnerabilities and risks from climate change, including rising sea levels, increasing precipitation, and high air temperatures. PWD is consistently working hard to operate in a manner that is cost-effective, operationally efficient, and thoughtful of the environmental and economic impacts in the present and future. This budget will allow us to continue to meet our essential charge of providing the water, wastewater, and stormwater services that are the cornerstone of public health in Philadelphia. To fund this work and billions of dollars in additional infrastructure investment that will be required in the coming years, we're pursuing a full court press when it comes to securing all available dollars from state and federal sources. To help debt service to maintain it manageable, the department has been aggressively pursuing available state and federal infrastructure low-interest loan funding. The department has applied for $920 million in state and federal funding, and thus far has been approved for its $860 million in low-interest loans. The department has also applied for $223 million in grant applications and has been awarded $50 million so far. Currently, the department is waiting for a decision on the remaining $168 million in applications. Furthermore, the department is preparing to submit additional applications for state and federal funding in the next few months. The department remains firmly committed to water affordability. The Water Revenue Departments have been working to increase enrollment in the Tiered Assistance Program, TAP. Through a data sharing agreement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the city was able to expedite the enrollment into TAP of customers that had received low-income household water assistance program grants. Furthermore, in February 2024, the Water Revenue Bureau began expediting enrollment for additional customers identified in the city's Office of Integrated Data for Evidence in Action, or IDEA database. To date, there are approximately 74,000 customers benefiting from our income-based water billing assistance programs, including the Tiered Assistance Program and the Senior Citizen Discount. In 2022, we introduced new policies that greatly reduced the number of customers eligible for payment-related water shutoffs. And we are continuing to work collaboratively with the Revenue Department and the Managing Director's Office to fine-tune those policies and increase outreach to customers facing shutoff or who have growing debt. In closing, I'd like to thank the department's workforce, whose efforts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to keep water running, sewers clear, and waterways clean contribute to an improved quality of life for everyone in the Philadelphia region. At Philadelphia Water, we believe and in unison exemplify daily that together we can do great things. This concludes my testimony. Thank you again for your time today, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just two real quick questions, and I see my good friend Mike Carroll over there. Welcome, Mike. And this has been a kind of repeated theme I've been seeing throughout this budget process that we'll get a chance to address fully with the administration, and that's the request for additional funding, but also the need to fulfill vacancies. And so, as of December 31st of 2024, the Water Department had 505 unfulfilled roles out of 2,505 budgeted positions. In this FY25 budget, the request is for an additional 52 positions. And so just give us an idea of what is the plan to fill these vacancies and the new positions requested. And the second part of the question is, in your 5-year plan, you cite that to whether to anticipate a higher retirement rate over the next 5 years, the division plans to allocate significant resources to upward mobility initiatives. How has that retirement rate been impacted, your vacancy rate, and what are the resources you are providing for upward mobility in your department?
Okay. Well, number one, with the vacancies that we have vacancy rate of about 20%. And unfortunately, and this is true across the country, as you know, I've worked at 2 other water utilities in St. Louis and DC. What we're having is, over the next 5 years, they're saying that we're going to lose 50% of our staffing. And so what we're doing to backfill is to, number one, use our Power Corp group to bring in the next generation of workers. We're also looking at using apprenticeships. PWD provides apprenticeship opportunities in areas of greatest needs, such as all the trade titles, the electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and building, and machine and mechanics, as well as areas which require specific technical competency, be it engineering aids and electronic and instrumental techs. We are currently expanding our apprenticeship program to include pathways to additional harder to fill civil service positions that are crucial to our operations. And we're also using upskilling. But what we have now is that we have good employees. And what you want to do is keep good employees. And one way you do that is to motivate them to see that there's a pathway for them to go forward and go up in the organization. One way we do this with our upskilling program, where it was launched in 2023, where PWD administers upskilling opportunities as a parallel to the department's apprenticeship program. Upskilling is targeted to internal employees in the general laboring titles, be it semi-skilled labor, water operations, repair helpers, or those at a lower pay range, more custodial workers and clerks, to allow existing employees without a clear promotional pathway the opportunity to receive the same trade-specific training as apprenticeships. We also have something that we started since I've joined the organization, intern to hire. A lot of times we lose individuals because it takes so long to go through the civil service process, do an internship, and then have to wait a long period of time before you get the letter giving them an offer. Many times, other private companies have already beaten us to it. The intern to hire, which we're able to work out with the city, allows college-level interns working for PWD to qualify for civil service examinations prior to graduation so they can quickly be hired by PWD upon graduation. We also are looking at college recruitment. And so we visit the different colleges around the Philadelphia area, and we bring them in for an internship. And I'm glad to say that we also visit Drexel, U of Penn, Temple, Villanova, Lafayette, Lehigh, Community College of the Philadelphia, Rowan, Rutgers, New Jersey Institute of Tech, University of Delaware, Howard, Lincoln, and Morgan State. And I will say this, I think, one, it's important to have a good program, but I take a lot of pride in that we put boots on the ground, that we actually stop and talk to the students. I remember being at Howard, and the students were walking by, not really paying attention, and I took my jacket off and just shook their hand and said, I would like to see you work at Philadelphia Water. And I'm glad to say a number of individuals have come in that way, that personal touch and that feeling of feeling welcomed in the organization. I'll say this, I think that it's going to be critical for us going forward, that to touch the younger generation, that they feel that there is a legitimate pathway into the organization. The organization, Philadelphia Water, will sell itself as far as being a good employer and the place to be. But we have to make sure that they know that it's there, and so we try to do that.
I think that was great, and you probably did, saying you're doing more than most that have come in front of us talking about how you're filling your vacancies. If you could provide those numbers to the chair and to the members, just for a follow-up for us, that would be great. The chair recognizes Councilman Anthony Phillips.
Thank you, Council President. Many homeowners and water department customers in Philadelphia are surprised to learn that they're responsible for repairs on pipes that connect their property to the city's water main. This is true even when the broken pipe is outside of your home or under the sidewalk and roadway. Problems with a home's main sewer line can cause blockages, drops in water pressure, and even sewage backups. Residents in the 9th District are currently facing an extreme hardship, high costs associated with repairs to the water and sewer service lines. To address this issue, the Homeowners Emergency Loan Program, also known as the HELP Loan, provides zero-interest loans for water service lines and sewer repairs. Are there grants available that support homeowner water or sewage service line repairs that we can do a better job? Well, we do know there's grants available, but how can we do a better job at making our seniors and residents in the city of Philadelphia more aware that they're responsible for service line repairs as well as grants and loans that are available for them to work to get those services?
I think one of the major keys that I want to see us do as an organization is to be transparent and to do a better job communicating with the public. Now, as far as the lateral, you're correct, and it's true across the country, that the main we are responsible for. The lateral is the responsibility of the homeowner. Now, there are insurance programs that you can sign up for and pay a small amount each month to then have the protection of the lateral replacement down the road should it happen. And as you mentioned, there's also the HELP loan. So you're able to get a loan with zero interest for 5 years. Now, as far as any grants, we're always looking for any type of assistance that we can receive from the federal and state level. And I mentioned earlier in my statement our successes in receiving some grants. But receiving a grant specifically for the lateral, that is something that if it becomes available, we certainly will pursue it. But that's not how the grant system is actually made at this time. It's mainly, at this point, you're able to get the HELP loan or you're able to have insurance. Now, I also would like to stop and let my director of operations speak if you had anything else to add to that.
Thank you, Commissioner, Council President, Council Member. My name is Ben Jewell, Deputy Commissioner of Operations. I think one of the ways we really can help our community members understand the difference in responsibility and what those boundaries are is the partnership we have with Council. And we have done that in a variety of environments, but really helping the water department get out in the community and share the message so people understand the limits of our responsibility and their responsibility, the tools that are available to help them should they need funding or assistance in order to do repairs. And again, the American Water Resources insurance program that Council put together is a great asset for any homeowner.
Great, and I just had one final question. I want to learn more about there's funding allocation from the Water Department for programs such as the Senior Citizens Discount, the Terror Assistance Program. Could a portion of this funding be designated for a pilot program aimed at assisting homeowners with repairing water service lines? And also, I just want to know that there's going to be a lot of infrastructure changes that you all are working on. You have big signs showing people that we're working on the pipes and so forth. Do we have a strong system where we knock on doors and make phone calls after the service is over to make sure residents feel like they had the proper service rendered? Because some residents actually call afterwards complaining, saying, this happened, that happened, and we have to come to you, but it'd probably be better if you all go to them first.
Okay, that's a very good question. Yeah. And again, I'll say this, I don't think you can ever, as a public servant, have too little communication with the people that we are assisting. So I think you're right, to a degree, if we could maybe connect afterwards, do a kind of a follow-through. But I do want you to understand this, that when we deal, especially with our green infrastructure projects, we meet with the public and talk with them about what we're doing. And those meetings, we have big projects of what we're doing. And there are door knockers and things that we put out to inform the public of what we're doing. But I would love to take it under consideration as far as in the future, when we finish a project, we do an after project communication. And I think we do to a certain degree, but I think there's always room for us to improve. Now, you also made a point about, with all of the projects that we have, or programs we have, the senior discount and the TAP program, I think you were also asking, could we use some of that money to repair the service lines? Now, legally, there's some issues there, and we're willing to look at any type of opportunity. But as a lawyer, I would say there's some legal issues in that you're dealing with private property. Right. Okay, so that's private property, and you would be using public funds on private property. But I would be more than happy to talk with the legal department to see if there's anything that would allow us to expand what we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. I yield the time back to you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Mike Driscoll.
Thank you, Council President. First, Commissioner, I'd like to compliment you and your staff. As Ben Jewell knows firsthand, one of the issues in my district was Salmon Street, or as Margie Caputo, who takes the phone calls in the morning, calls it the nightmare on Salmon Street. But we've been able to, over 2 years, address a lot of old infrastructure issues, and your staff has come out at least 3 times at night and met with the community group. Not that I'm suggesting that for everybody, but in this particular case, I thought it was appropriate, and I can't thank you enough for that. I also want to highlight your cooperation with the I-95 project when when you acquired the property, a recent property, and you had a tenant that is repairing I-95 on Contman and doing the I-95 overlay. An eviction there would have caused delays to both projects, and you and your staff figured out a way to accommodate them in the short term, and I'm very grateful for that. I do have to say going forward, anytime, and it's not just the water department, it's the PICO and it's PGW, anytime there's talk of a ratepayer increase, my phone blows up by Council President Johnson because he appointed me chair of public utilities. So I just want you to know that we want to work with you collaboratively to find creative ways, both with the federal government and the state government and the local government, to figure out if there's opportunities that one of us knows about that the other one doesn't, so that we can exhaust every single opportunity before we pass anything on to our ratepayers. Because with the low-income residents we have in the city and our fixed-income seniors, there's a lot of anxiety out there right now, and it's increasing as inflation and prices of rentals are going up, and what Senator Casey references as greedflation, it's really surfacing to our residents here in the city. So, I pledge as chair of public utilities to work with you and your staff, and look forward to doing so. So thank you.
I appreciate your assistance, and I think it's wonderful that we work together, because like you said, there may be things that we know of that you don't, and there may be things that you know of, and sometimes we have to move quickly and be nimble, and so I appreciate the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Jamie Gaudier.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
I wanted to ask about the use of federal funds. I know that the mayor's budget indicates that American Rescue Plan funds will continue to be used for revenue replacement in FY25. I wanted to understand whether the water department is slated to receive any of that funding, and if so, for what purpose?
Okay. Ask Lawrence Yangley, my Deputy Commissioner of Finance. Do you have any information on that?
If you may please repeat the question on the specific funding. But what we do know, up to this point, we are not aware of receiving funding from the general fund. That is the information we have up to this time. I hope we can have negotiation in that line, but we have not been informed about such funding coming to PWD.
Okay. Can you talk more? The commissioner talked about some 200 plus million in grant funding that we did apply for. Can you talk more about what you're targeting those funds for?
Almost all of the funding we have applied for go for our capital program, no operating program. And they think about most of this funding, even the low interest loan we receive, you first have to spend the funding, then ask for reimbursement. So even though receiving the funding, you will see that 860 million is going to be over a couple of years. So these funding are for capital program and not for operating program.
Great. Are there ways that we can imagine a more aggressive use of federal funding, whether that's the, spin down of the funding that the city has already, or, trying to attract more federal funding could help benefit ratepayers?
We are going after every funding that we can get. And just recently, we approached the senator's offices, Senator Casey and Letterman, to say, can you give us some appropriation? And we are in discussion with them. They asked us to apply. We have applied. So I have a team that just committed to getting funding from whatever source that we can get funding from. So, and we have always said we'll be very, very happy if we can get any lead. Like the commissioner said, there are things we know that you may not know. There are things that you know that we don't know. Let us know if you have information on any funding line. We'll be so happy to pursue those funding. We have a team ready to go on any funding direction.
Can you follow up with council with a list of the opportunities that you have applied for and for what projects or activities?
Yes, please repeat that. I have some.
Excuse me?
I said, please repeat that.
Oh, would you be able to follow up with council with a list of the federal funding opportunities that you have applied for and for what purpose?
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Council President. I'll be really, really quick. I wanted to just talk about the regulatory environment with PWD, but first, thank you all so much for the work that we've been able to do together. Thank you for hosting my staff for staff retreat, particularly at Belmont Water Treatment Plant. I don't see my Girls High sister here, but thank you very, very much for all of your work, Commissioner, and to your entire team. We appreciate each of you, and we learned so much. So recently, we've really been seeing many water utilities across the country, especially integrated water, wastewater, stormwater utilities such as PWD, face increasing regulatory pressure and impending unfunded mandates to address things like the replacements of privately owned lead sewer lines, limiting nutrients entering the river and streams, addressing PFAS concerns that has come up in our EPA group, expectations around expediting water quality improvements through the CSO, mitigation and stormwater runoff management. And that's in addition to all the other necessary investments that you all have to do to maintain and enhance, sort of a significant amount of existing yet aged infrastructure that we have in an old city like Philadelphia. And in addition to that, we have all the climate issues that we are facing here. So long story short, I just wanted to ask you all, how can City Council and the new administration continue to work with water, the environmental advocates, our local, state, and federal partners to advocate for appropriate rulemakings, realistic implementation schedules, prioritization of strategic investments, and increased funding assistance programs like those that we typically see in the transportation sector?
I think when I first spoke, I talked about together we can do great things. I think one thing that's very important is that, especially now coming out of COVID, that we do what you're pointing at, which is to work together. And I think it's important that we meet with possibly some members of City Council who have ideas about additional monies as far as we're able to obtain. We are in the process of hiring someone who's going to help us with policy and legislative affairs. And one aspect of that will be to help us to quarterback where there are additional funds. But I want to be very clear that the department has applied for over $920 million, almost $1 billion in federal and state funding, and we received $860 million in low interest loans. We have been aggressive. We have been successful in pursuing that money. And I must say, too, that some of that money we're getting is financing, not funded, so it's not cash in hand, as Mr. Yangley had mentioned. And we use it on projects listed in the water plan, the master plan. Okay, so those are the large list of projects that we have. And they're not small projects. They're like, with the water revitalization plan, we're talking about tearing down, demolishing Queen Lane and rebuilding. And so it's, these are massive programs. We're talking about a tunnel under the Schuylkill River to allow for redundancy that will allow us to be able to pull from either river in a time of emergency. But no, I would want to meet and see if there's ways that we could work together to track down additional funding at the state and federal levels.
I heard the bell and I'm going to honor the clock, but I wanted to say I think it'll be exceedingly important that we do that and include the advocates at the onset of the process so that they better understand, how all of this is rolling out, but also being inclusive of all the new members of council and the new administration. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to Michelle, who joined PWD. She has been stellar with community outreach, and we miss her in revenue, but she's been wonderful at water, and we appreciate having her. I will submit the balance of my questions in writing. Thank you, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Leader. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Couple questions about the water main replacement. Can you talk to us more about the water main replacement status and the sewer reconstruction status, where we are and what the outlook and the timeline would be for that? As a new council member, I'm just coming on board. I get these calls all the time.
Okay. Well, you said the water main replacement. What was the other thing that you mentioned?
And the sewer reconstruction.
Okay. Why don't you mention it?
When you're speaking specifically about capital investment and
Yeah.
renewal of PWD infrastructure?
Yes.
Can I hand that too?
Oh, absolutely. Steve, why don't you come up? Steve Furtek is in charge of our capital construction.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Steve Furtek, manager of construction. We have a water main replacement program that is funded at 42 miles per year. The sewer replacement program is funded at 13 miles per year. We're not achieving those goals currently, but we're getting really close. We're still coming back from COVID, which took us, basically, it cut our program in half for those 2 years. And we're now reaching back and trying to regain our consistency on that program.
Can you talk to us about the coordination efforts with other utilities when you are doing this, the replacements of the water mains and their sewer reconstruction?
Sure. Every project that we do goes through every utility in the city. So PECO, PGW, they all see these projects ahead of time. If there's coordination involved and if PECO needs to move something or gas has to move something, that's all coordinated before we bid the job.
And I would say that there are meetings that are held between the different utilities as we go into major projects and as problems arise. I also want to add, when we talk about the water main replacement, over the last 29 years, we've averaged 19 miles per year. We're ramping it up, the water main, to a goal of replacing 42 miles per year, 1.5 of the distribution system per year. In fiscal year 2004 and beyond, at the cost of $2.8 million per mile. Separately, when you look at the sewer replacement, over the last 29 years, we have averaged 7.8 miles per year. PWD is ramping up its sewer replacement rate to 12 miles of sewer reconstruction in fiscal year 2024, and increasing the number of miles by 1 mile per year until we reach 20 miles per year at close to $5.4 million per mile. We have over 6,000 miles of pipe on the water side and on the sewer side. And similar as across the nation, a lot of our pipe is reaching the end of life. And so we're ramping up so that we're able to make the repairs before we have a problem. And we have a matrix, a decision-making tree that we use into determining what pipes are replaced and when, so that we're able to be ahead of a problem as best we can.
And I know the bell rang, but I have one more related question, Council President, regarding the infill of the roads once the project is complete. In my district, there was confusion on one block where they said, well, this was a streets department project, and around the corner was a water department project. So it was like, and that's why I asked the coordination question, like who, and what's the timeline, I guess, to repave the roads after the project has been complete, or what's the communication between the streets, between water, regarding the repavement of the streets and the sidewalks in particular as well?
Yeah, the streets department sees each of our projects ahead of time, and they put together the requirements for paving that we have to do on that project. So if it's a large street, we may only do the trenches. If it's a narrow street, we may end up doing curb to curb because we've disturbed that area. So it's really based on the disturbance that we produce in the project.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Great question, too. I've dealt with that issue in a variety of different times. Councilmember Ketsi Lozada.
Thank you, Council President. My apologies for not being here at the beginning, so if one of my colleagues asked this question, I want to apologize ahead of time. But first I want to say thank you to you, Commissioner, for your support in several blocks in my district who experience some lateral issues. And the water department, your team was able to respond to them very quickly and was very supportive of them. So I want to say I'm grateful, and I wanted to put that on the record. But because of that experience, I want to talk about some of the programs that are available for residents who experience challenges with their laterals, who can't respond to them as quickly as they should, and ultimately end up compromising the entire block. And I'm going to use Dillman Street as an example, who has been shut down to traffic for over 12 months, right? Because multiple properties had lateral issues, and some of them did not qualify for the HELP loan. What are you all doing to be able to help residents who experience lateral issues, who don't qualify for programs like the HELP loan, and who ultimately can cause greater damage to not just their block, but to the neighboring blocks, because the problem just keeps getting worse?
Okay. And I had a little difficulty hearing you, I apologize, but I think ultimately you're asking if a homeowner has an issue with their line and it's undermining others, but they're not repairing it, what can we do?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's a possibility of abate and fix. And so what we're able to do is go in and do the work and charge the person who's responsible. But you're right, if you have a piece of property next to yours and it's leaking and they don't fix it, it will start to undermine the system down the street. Okay, so in emergency situations, we're able to go and do abate and fix. But let me have my engineer from operations speak to that too.
And that's exactly the experience that we've had, right? There was one property, they didn't respond, it ultimately compromised the neighbor, and it just made the entire block just a mess. And so there's not been traffic, can't go down the road for, it's been, I'm sure, over a year now.
Thank you for the question. I would love to follow up after, maybe on the specific block that you're talking about, but kind of respond more generally to your question. I'd also would be really curious to understand the limitations in the HELP loan, because typically that is I would like to get this, and then we provide the information and the resources in order to allow for that no interest loan to be processed and to provide that service. So if we can follow up offline, that would be fantastic.
My question is in general, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not just, I'm sure that in the 7th Council District, we're going to have that issue in many other places, right? There are homeowners who just can't afford to have their laterals repaired. And that's not just one instance. I mean, it's happened in other places, but I use that as an example because there were multiple homes that were faced with the same issue, and because all of them couldn't respond and didn't qualify for a help loan, it compromised the entire block, right? So how do we do that? Understanding that our infrastructure is aging, right? And there are poor families who can't afford or who won't qualify for the help loan. What do we do in that situation?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very good observation. You know, we are talking here about our major infrastructure investment programs to renew and rehabilitate our sewer infrastructure, and every home that was developed at the time that sewer was put in has its own private infrastructure that is the same age or close to the same age as our sewers. And so obviously there's a need for investment and renewal in that private infrastructure. One of the tools we talked about earlier was the American Water Resources Insurance program, which is a relatively affordable program that provides funds in the event that something happens on private infrastructure. Obviously, we offer the help loan. The commissioner discussed our abatement program. We like to use that as a last resort because it involves not only us doing the work, but also placing a lien against the property. And so in that way, you know, if there's a real estate transaction in the future, that lien would come due and the cost would be returned. But typically, our preference is not to use that. We don't want to put a lien against someone's home if we don't have to. But we can and have done that in the event that there's a threat to public health and safety and or a need to protect the public infrastructure as well.
And I'll stress again that legally we're dealing with private property. That line is theirs. And so to use public funds on private property, we may have to address some legal issues before we would be able to do that. So again, you're going to have insurance, you're going to have the help loan, you're going to have an abatement process.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Brooks.
Good afternoon. I'm going to try to put all my questions and put them together. So I want to thank you, Mr. Heyman, for your hard work during multiple crises, and I appreciate the outreach that you've done to folks, was done with folks in my community. But today I wanted to ask about constituent services issues I've been seeing. We have heard time and time again from constituents that people have a very hard time reaching someone in the water department. And even if they're suffering from an emergency, you know, people have been calling our office around water emergencies, water shutoffs, but that's what people feel like they need to do because they're unable to reach folks because they're not getting a response or anything else. So in the budget detail that even the higher wait times and are anticipated for this year. So what is the average wait time for someone who is able to get on the phone with the water department employee? And what is the department doing to cut down on the wait time? And then the second thing, you mentioned this earlier about the Raise Your Hand program, which allows households that have received shutoff notice to have their services restored if they call the water department, and lets them know that there's someone in the household is under the age of 18, 65 and up, or has a disability. This program only works if someone knows about this program ahead of time. So the other question is, what can you do to make sure that Philadelphians, young Philadelphians, older Philadelphians, and Philadelphians with disability don't get their water shut off in the first place? And the third question is, I'm glad that Philadelphia has a moratorium on water shutoffs for non-payment in the winter. However, water shutoffs in the summer can be extremely challenging and dangerous for families, particularly elderly people, because of the temperatures as they continue to rise, and violence wells in the warmer months. Many cities, including Chicago, have no water shutoffs for non-payment, and has Philadelphia considered a moratorium on water shutoffs in the summer?
Okay. 1 second. Okay, excellent questions. I appreciate them.
Did you get them all? I just
think
kind
so.
of coupled them together.
Let me ask Glenn Abrams to come up. He is the Deputy Water Commissioner for Communications. Okay. And so Glenn, she was asking about the average wait times and what are we doing to cut the amount of time people have to wait?
Yes. Good afternoon. I'm Glenn Abrams, Deputy Commissioner of Communications and Engagement. So thank you for that question. And we have undertaken a few new initiatives at the Customer Contact Center, especially regarding callbacks. And so we do hear this. I don't have the specific wait times, but I'll get that to you. But customers always, if they are waiting on the phone, have an opportunity to request a callback. We instituted a new system earlier this year that only has a callback go to one of our agents if a live person answers that. So it is significantly cutting down the amount of time that agents are making phone calls and leaving messages. So automating that process actually has our agents on the phone more often to answer live people. So we are seeing times go down. I'll have to get the information for you. Regarding raise your hand, hearing you, yes, obviously they need to be able to get through to be able to say, I meet one of those conditions. But we have partnered with the Community Resource Corps for the last couple years. And that is an initiative utilizing neighborhood residents to do targeted community engagement. And so we are working with the Water Revenue Bureau, have identified customers that have accumulated debt that may be eligible for shutoff, and having targeted calling, texting, door knocking. So we're really trying to make an effort to keep water on. And to your last issue, certainly in the last couple years, the city administration has been exploring the issue and the policies around water shutoffs. All of the protections that have been put in place today protect around 300,000 customers from being shut off. What we're trying to do is target the people that do have the means to pay their water bill. They just have decided not to because during the winter months there's really no consequence from not paying. So that is what we're trying to do. But certainly there has been a lot of discussion about using shutoffs as a collections tool. One of the other things that the Water Revenue Bureau did recently at the end of, I think it was October of last year, is utilizing collections, outside collections agencies at the beginning of the process, and have moved shutoffs at the very end. So it's the very last resort in terms of trying to collect on debt.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would add that if we were to not collect, to have a moratorium, that would be additional funds that we would not receive. And we're already in a very difficult situation financially. I look at it as like being on a train and you have to put in coal to keep the engine going. A lot of people think we have a lot of coal because we have the federal and state funds. But considering how far we have to travel, there's more coal that has to go in. When you're looking at water mains being replaced at $2 and $5 million per mile, it's a lot of mileage we have to cover. And so everyone who can pay needs to pay. But also, as he said, we've moved the level of delinquency that triggers a shutoff from $150 to $1,000. We have customers enrolled in the tiered TAP program are exempt from shutoff. Customers enrolled in the senior citizen program are exempt from shutoff. Citizens use internal data to watch enrollment data for other income programs, so we have automatic enrollment into some of these programs. Households with children under 18, as you said, seniors, they are able to not be shut off. More than 300,000 households are protected from shutoffs because of these new initiatives we've taken. And also I'd add that recently customers with 750 or more of accrued water debt are protected, or customers in danger of shutoff. Customers that have been shut off and customers that have had water restored to get them into assistance are of longer-term help, I mean to say. So we've partnered there to get additional information out to those type of individuals. So we're doing everything that we can, I believe. Now, also, too, I want to say with the call-in center that we always need to improve. And we're looking at ways to wherever we may need to contract out for additional assistance, or, because nothing's more frustrating than when you call and you can't get someone, okay? Now, in defense of the organization, and I might sound biased, there are times that I am called with a problem and I call in to the number and I get through in a reasonable amount of time. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to improve and that we need to be sensitive to those individuals who are having difficulty, and we're doing our best to try to address that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great question. The chair recognizes Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Commissioner, and your staff for being here. I have a question around the explosion of biotechnology in the city of Philadelphia. And is there a plan for wastewater management arising out of millions of square footage of biolabs and life science activities? I was not able to find it in the 5-year strategic initiatives, but maybe you've already addressed that. So if you could elaborate on that.
Okay. Let me ask Mark Camarada to step up. Or did you have an action?
I can speak to it.
Go right ahead.
And then just so I'm clear, I'm answering the right question. Your question is related to the wastewater that's generated from bioengineering activities.
Yes.
And
there's a lot of biohazard as well involved.
Yes. So the water department, as do all local water utilities operating wastewater treatment plants, implements a federal program called the Pretreatment Program. It delegates responsibility for regulating and enforcing controls on industrial wastewater discharges to the publicly owned treatment works, or the wastewater treatment plant. The water department currently has a staff of engineers and field technicians that are responsible for permitting and enforcing permit requirements on industrial facilities of all sorts all across the city. And so as businesses are developing and growing in the city, those businesses have a responsibility to communicate to us. They should understand the regulatory environment, but we also have a proactive program called surveying, where we're reaching out to businesses that may not understand the rules and regulations to ensure that we're aware of the components of their wastewater discharges and also applying the appropriate regulations to ensure that they are protecting our wastewater treatment plants, which in the end are the protection for public health and for the rivers.
So the issue really is, I hear you, so a lot of people might know but still might not choose to let you know, right? So is there a trigger mechanism, say when there's a permit pulled for some sort of facility? Are you informed about that in terms of what the impact would be on your services? Is there a intersectional communication platform for you with our building options all around the city, with L&I, for example?
Presently, I'm not specifically aware of a trigger mechanism for that. A lot of what we do for surveying is looking at kind of trade organization documentation to identify classes of industry that may fall under the regulations. And then we do that proactive outreach in order to ensure that they understand their responsibilities in order to protect our wastewater treatment plants and public health.
I just want to tighten that system to make sure we don't have people who are violating because they chose not to understand something they're supposed to do.
We are always happy to work with our government partners
Yes.
to share information more efficiently so that we can all be as informed as possible.
And a second question is about two things. Is the wholesale wastewater contracts are all with outside entities outside the city? Is that true?
Mark?
Turn the microphone.
Thank you. Yes, the wholesale program are outside of the city.
And the reason I ask is, do we have providers who could be in the city, or maybe they needed to be brought up to speed to get those contracts? The indirect impact for our economy is big when we use our homegrown folks. So I just wondered if you have looked at that, and is that an opportunity you're exploring so that our local folks could get those contracts?
If you may repeat the question, please.
So your wastewater contracts are all outside the city, and I'm looking to see, is there availability for having those wastewater contracts inside, with inside providers, people who are in Philadelphia, so we could realize the revenue for having them do the work that you need.
So the wholesale agreements, there we go. The wholesale agreements are contractual agreements that the water department holds with outside municipalities. And what the contract does is it allows them to either receive wastewater conveyance and treatment services from us or freshwater delivery services from us. And so kind of the way it is structured, it is we already have our agreement with all of the City of Philadelphia residents. We do that through metering and billing. With the outlying municipalities that are subject to these wholesale agreements, they're actually paying us so that they don't have to own and operate their own wastewater treatment plant.
And so the folks who are doing the actual work, who you contract out with, are local Philadelphia companies?
It's our plant.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're all local Philadelphia. So the contracts you do with Montgomery County or Bucks County, they're sending their wastewater to be processed here, is what you're saying? And the people who, you do the processing, but is there a supply chain where we could have a company, which is Philadelphian, participate in that, a supply chain process for wastewater remediation, is the question, really.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's just our employees, it's our staff.
So it's all local staff?
Yes.
There's no private business involved?
There's no private business. So
In this wastewater,
wholesale
sort of
contract.
cleaning up the wastewater, basically, that comes from elsewhere and Philadelphia?
No.
So that's all done inside?
It's all, we have 3 wastewater plants, 3 drinking water plants, and it's all Philadelphia Water
Great, okay.
employees.
Thank you. So the contracts are for you to receive money
To
from?
receive.
So, good.
And to do it for them.
Good, good.
But it's our employees.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm done.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes the council member Mark Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate all your responsiveness. I also want to thank your staff, who's been very responsive and always deals with our constituent service issues. They are great. They get back to you, so great job with that. I'm not going to belabor the point because we did have a commerce hearing on the water runoff and overflow, CSO overflow into the rivers. We talk about the great job of the Green City Clean Water Program, very supportive of that. And just as we look for grants and other opportunities, how we look to enhance our green infrastructure, but also look at what gray infrastructure can be done to make sure that not only when it has rainy days and storms like we have this week, but even when there's dry weather, overflow, how we can protect this sewage from going into the rivers, I think is something that we really need to concentrate on in the future as we not only have the water better for our fish and our recreation, but so that now that we're engaging the water more as a city and we're seeing connections both on the Delaware and the Schuylkill, recreation, the river is becoming more a recreational facility for our citizens and visitors. Do you see yourself investing in any gray infrastructure to help with the CSO overflow into the rivers?
Gray infrastructure? Okay.
Gray.
Okay. We have an integrated process in that we always have to be able to review and analyze where we are at a specific point in time. Okay, so we're going forward with green to meet new national standards and requirements, or there's a change in technology. We would look at gray and use it to the benefit of the community. But when it comes to the Delaware, as far as being swimmable, there are some issues there that we've looked at, and others, as you know, have looked at as far as, it is a commercial fishing lane, and so it's dangerous to swim in that area. Also, too, the level of increase in the processing of the water, the wastewater, get to a point where you could swim would divert funding that is needed in other areas of town where we would need to use to correct other problems in the water system. So I say all that to say there's a large listing of things that we have to do throughout the city, and we are constantly in a situation where we have to balance what we're doing in one area for one goal. And so to answer your question, would we consider gray? Yes, we would consider it to the extent that it makes sense in the big picture of what we have to do with the facts that we're facing at that time.
And I'm not saying to do one or the other. I mean, I think as a city, we're able to do more than one thing and look at it, but we need to be able to plan for that. And with the green infrastructure, and we're looking at even when the studies were done back in 2005, 2006, with the rainfall totals, how much that has changed, with the global warming and the storms that we have been getting, which is even more severe than the studies showed in 2005 and 2006. So, again, we're still very supportive, but what else can complement the green infrastructure work that we're doing? I think we need a plan in place, because when there are opportunities and there's grants available, or if you're looking at infrastructure money from the federal government, the people who get that are people who are prepared, people who already have a plan in place, people who already these are some options we would like to do if we have that opportunity, right? So the green infrastructure is there, but not having a plan for any gray infrastructure work that some other municipality has done would just set us behind. So my suggestion would be to look at these things to say, all right, if we putting plans in place for gray infrastructure, if we had all the money in the world, what could we do? And be prepared for that, because not every year do we have opportunities like we do now with infrastructure dollars. And so my advice would be to work on it. I understand what you're saying, that if you invest in certain things, other things would be taken away. But if we don't, then we'll never have that opportunity. And then to say that it's a shipping lane and not a recreational lane. There's places like New York and Baltimore and other places that have shipping lanes and also use recreation in the same waters. There's ways to do it if we are coordinating, collaborating together. So I would just like to see that maybe a plan in place for using that gray infrastructure be developed as you move forward.
And I think we can certainly.
I know Mark wants to jump up and say.
I know. He can. I just wanted to offer. I mean, we as a department, our long-term control plan is a blend of conventional gray infrastructure and green stormwater infrastructure. And what I'm kind of hearing in this question is maybe we're not doing the best job of telling the story of how we're investing in that conventional infrastructure. Now, my background's in sewer system operations, so the gray side is the side that makes me, makes me happy. And so I wanted to highlight, we have a few projects right now, investments in conventional infrastructure that are in the field being implemented right now, investments around the $200 million capital investments that'll yield around 750 million gallons of CSO reduction. Some of them are visible, some of them are not. Working inside our Northeast Water Pollution Control Plant to increase the ability of the plant to accept flow. It'll impact the Frankfurt and Tacony Creek watershed. We're working on 2 projects along the Delaware River, the Old Frankfurt Creek Crossing, a siphon that traverses under the creek. And then up further north, we're creating a new connection to our intercepting sewer system. And both of those projects together will yield immediate benefits for CSO reduction. They're optimization and improvements to our existing collection system that increase our investment in our conventional infrastructure and improve our CSO performance.
And an overall plan, right?
Yes.
And an overall plan.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mark.
What he
I know
said.
you're dying.
What he said. Hi, everybody. Mark Camerata, the Deputy for Planning and Environmental Services at Philly Water. I think Ben summed it up. I mean, we can get you the list of 15. We have 15 traditional infrastructure projects scheduled in the next 5 to 7 years to take another, half a billion gallon reduction bite out of our CSO concerns. Those are all traditional projects. We're constantly planning. Our entire department for hundreds of years have tried to queue up projects. You look at what is in our capital plan for the next bunch of years. We have enough projects to fund, for the next 15 years. It's a matter of, getting the money, getting the rates, getting the bonds, getting low cost of borrowing, getting grant funds to continue to deliver the amount of projects we have. But we got a strong stable of capital projects that are traditional projects in the queue to help us to continue to deliver water, wastewater, stormwater services for the next 200 years.
And it's good, and I'm not saying we're not doing a good job at that. We always want to be able to be prepared for more if it becomes available. Yes. When you talk about 5 billion gallons of sewage into the rivers, that's a lot, right? And even, we're doing a good job of trying to increase that. $500 million of that being removed is great, but I think we could still look to do better. So hopefully we continue working with you on those plans and coming up with additional ways we could help with revenue, grants, and other ways to be able to get that job done. So.
Absolutely. To the Commissioner's point before, it's about communication. We need to do more of it, more frequent, more detailed conversations about not just what's in front of us right now from a regulatory standpoint, but what's coming at us. It's going to be a significant strain on our investments, for the next couple decades. We need all the help we can, and we look forward to those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Looking at the budget, the Water Department budgeted and actual obligations for fiscal year 2023, a little over $13,000 for seminars, but in fiscal year 2025, that jumps to $657,000. Could you tell us why there's this huge increase in seminars?
Do you have that one?
I'm trying to find.
I will have to, unless you have the information right there.
I'm trying to reference.
It's on, I guess, page 32 of what we have under, I believe it's in the class, the code is 256. Class 256.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Candy Jones, Deputy Commissioner for Human Resources and Administration. So seminars is a centralized pool of funds. We do dedicate quite a bit of funding to training and development of internal staff via internal training and development opportunities, going to conferences, seminars, memberships from professional organizations for our staff. We can get you an itemized list of all those seminars that are planned for the next fiscal year. I can certainly provide that, along with all of our internal training and development opportunities that we have planned.
Thank you. I mean, again, it just seems like a large increase from 2013, which is just 13,000, 2014, which is a little bit under 500,000, 478,000, and then an additional almost $200,000 increase in seminars. So, thank you. We can provide that to us. I would really
Absolutely.
Really appreciate
we can
that.
do a historical analysis for you, along with the itemized listing. No problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, in that same class 250. Looks like there's almost about $24 million in contracts. I know this may not be something you will be able to provide us today, but can you get us a breakdown of the demographics of the leadership in these particular contracted entities, as well as the associates who are working on the particular matters? I'm just looking here particularly for the accountant services, legal services, things like that, that are all under class 250.
Certainly, we can provide that information.
If I may, I wanted to go back when you asked about seminars and all. It's important to understand that we have returning employee staffing issues in that we have people retiring, new individuals joining us. They need to be brought up to speed, need certain training. That's also one of the things that attracts people to Philadelphia Water, is that they're able to get certain training to move up in their field. And so that's a big part of what we're dealing with, is the fact that we have an aging group leaving and they're being replaced by a younger group that is getting additional training as we go forward. It's also important to note that, when we were going through COVID, we didn't go on training. There wasn't much training going on. And so at this point, we're trying to get things back on track so that people are able to get the additional education they need to be proficient in their jobs and to succeed at what they do. And again, we have an aging group where people are rolling out, and we have a newer group coming in that needs and benefits from the training.
Thank you. Mr. President, I have one more question regarding stormwater management and affordable housing. In my prior life, I represented property owners, builders, developers, et cetera. who are now building affordable housing in the city. They say an impediment to building affordable housing in the city is the stormwater management costs, particularly when where they're developing pretty much new blocks, right? And if they were just developing one single family house one-off, the stormwater management compliance issues wouldn't apply. But because they are now developing, multiple parcels at a time, it increased the cost of developing these affordable houses by about $15,000 per house, essentially. And they wanted to figure out, is this something where the water department be willing to look at this issue to determine how we can decrease the cost of developing affordable housing in the city without essentially compromising some of the stormwater management issues.
He needs a taller chair. Okay.
Hi, Mark again here. Thank you very much for that question. I know this has come up with the Turn the Key program as we start thinking about how to create more affordable housing for not just city employees, but affordable housing across the entire city. There is a cost to managing stormwater. There is a cost borne by us for the services, and there's a cost to the developers for meeting the regulations that we have put in place in order for that to happen. You are correct that developers are absorbing those costs to meet what is, in a way, us figuring out ways to privatize regulatory compliance by having those that modify the city through development practices to do their part in mitigating the effects of development on our water resources. We are looking at right now different ways to think about stormwater requirements through our regulations that apply to residential housing. Residential properties, it's hard to manage stormwater at cheap cost. Large parcels sometimes can identify and isolate sections of the property where they can manage stormwater, but on small residential units, it's hard to do that. So it's become more and more complex to cost effectively manage stormwater. We're gonna have to figure out ways to get creative. So we're looking at different tools, we're looking at different standards, we're potentially maybe changing earth disturbance thresholds so that we can get other properties that are non-residential to kind of make up the slack for managing stormwater while we figure out more creative, maybe less onerous ways on these residential properties. We're also gonna have to get a little creative on thinking about mitigation or banking and trading, ways for us to think about centralizing stormwater management maybe away from that residential development, so we're still getting the benefits in that community associated with decentralized nature-based stormwater management that our regulations provide, but still allow us to kind of maximize the footprint for the development property. So it's a complicated issue, but it all is tied into making sure that we can manage stormwater and effectively kind of mitigate the effects of development that has caused kind of the water resource related issues we've had by not managing development for 200 years.
Yeah, so just as an FYI, I'm the vice chair of the Transportation and Public Utilities Commission, so we're probably going to be holding a hearing on this subject sometime in the future. Sure. And as another comment the commissioner made, we do use public money on private property. It's other programs that we have, such as Basic System Repair Program and other programs that the city has to use public money on private property. So that's just, we have to just think creatively on how we can do that if that's a goal of the city. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, and wrapping us up, Councilman Jimmy Gautier.
Thank you, Council President. I don't have a question, I have a request for information. I was wondering if you could follow up with Council with information on our progress with respect to Green City Clean Waters, now that we're in year 13, progress as to where we expect it to be by now, and also information on what we expect to accomplish on the plan in the FY25 budget year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can give you some information now.
Okay, great.
And then we'll follow up for more detail. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay. Well, we're in year 11 of 25 years. As of the end of fiscal year 23, we had 923 green infrastructure sites in dozens of neighborhoods, have resulted in more than 3 billion gallon reduction in annual combined sewer overflow. So the required deliverables for this program ramp up considerably moving forward, requiring an increase of staff positions to meet our regulatory obligation. The cost for construction and maintenance are going to increase as we go forward. We will continue to track long-term results and evaluate potential modifications as needed. As a public utility, we take responsibility to use revenues from the water bills in an impactful and equitable way. And we remain dedicated to our vision of combining widespread neighborhood-based green stormwater infrastructure investment and targeted improvements to our robust sewer system to strategically reduce combined sewer overflow. And so we'll look and bring additional information to you, additional data.
Thank you, and certainly I heard that in your earlier testimony. It sounds impressive. I'm trying to put that in context to where we wanted to be by now, and also want more information on what ramping up looks like, and how that compares to where we saw ourselves in the FY25 budget year.
Yes, we will be able to provide some additional.
Yeah, I could give a little teaser. We can definitely identify the budget line items associated with funding our consent order and agreement projects. As Ben mentioned before, we have about 12 to 15 traditional projects that are queued up. In the next 5 to 7 years, we can get a listing of those. Those are all allowing us to further nibble away at this CSO concern that we all have. We've achieved over 3,200 green acres. We have another 2,000 in the design process right now. We're on track to meet our year 15 compliance targets, and we're looking at the number of projects in the queue and the trajectory we need in order to meet year 20. At the same time, to Councilman Scula's point, while always looking at other infrastructure needs that serve multiple purposes. So how are we thinking about traditional infrastructure that helps us with climate resiliency, with flood mitigation, in addition to helping us with water quality improvements as well. So a lot of projects in the hopper. We can get details, we can get budget line items, and we can explain kind of the trajectory we're on, not just for year 15, but for beyond.
That's great. It'd be good to understand how that all fits together. And I know that we were, stars internationally for our efforts to use green stormwater infrastructure. At least at one point we were. And I just want to make sure that we're still holding that as a high priority for the city.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Madam Leader, you want to slide one in there before we go for an adjournment?
Of my questions because they're very long.
Okay.
That's why I only got in one.
If that binder is any indication, yeah, they sure are.
We thank you for your testimony, and Commissioner, as always, good to see you, and continue to keep up the good work. Thank you very much, and also for all of the information requested, please make sure you provide that information to the chair, and we will provide it to members as well. All right. Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Kathy Gilmore Richardson for a motion at the public hearing and meeting on the bills and resolutions before the committee today stand in recess until Wednesday, April the 3rd of 2024 at 10 a.m. in room 400, City Hall.
Thank you, Council President. I move that Council's Committee of the Whole stand in recess until Wednesday, April 3rd at 10 a.m.
It has been moved and properly seconded that the public hearing and meeting on the bills and resolutions before the committee today stand in recess until Wednesday, April the 3rd, 2024 at 10 a.m. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries, and this committee stands in recess until Wednesday, April the 23rd, 2024 at 10 a.m., in which we will reconvene.